government failure, stock market crash, and dictatorial alliances are not popular. People are starting to realize that there is no truth here beyond the desire for personal wealth and power. And then James Carville told Dan Abrams that he says, I believe that this administration in less than 30 days, this should be fewer than, less than 30 days, is in the midst of a massive collapse, and particularly a collapse in public opinion. And as Congressman Ro Khanna said earlier in the program, quoting Abraham Lincoln, public opinion is everything. At the same time, 4 Republicans have now thrown Nazi salutes, 3 over the past weekend at CPAC. You know, they think they can overcome their fear of the people by intimidating us. These fascists are getting panicky, and panicky would-be tyrants are dangerous. Now, that said, Thursday is the 92nd anniversary of the February 27, 1933 burning of the German Parliament building, the Reichstaggebäude. And, this was in the middle of an economic crisis, the Great Depression. And it was done by, presumably, allegedly, Dutch communist Marius van der Lubbe, a young man who was alleged to be mentally ill, actually. He tried to attack a couple of other buildings, putting basically Molotov cocktails on the outside of them. Unsuccessfully, it didn't catch on fire. And then somebody let him inside the German Parliament building, which had these long halls with old tapestries hanging down the walls, which are very flammable. And he set that thing on fire, and the whole building went up. And when that happened, Hitler knew this was coming. His intelligence services had told him about van der Lubbe. And he had just been chancellor at that point in time for about a month, actually about 2 months. On the 27th of February, it would have been 2 months. And so he rushed over to the Parliament building and got in front of the media. He was live on the radio all over Germany. He said, "You are now witnessing the beginning of a great epoch in history. This fire is the beginning. It's a sign from God." And he declared an all-out war on terrorism, and said that the terrorists who had done the fire were the socialists in the government and the Jews. 2 weeks later, he opened the first detention center in Oranienburg for terrorists. And of course, the people who went there, who were put there, were mostly the communists and the socialists in the parliament, who he blamed for the burning of the Parliament building. And he said he was doing this in the name of stopping terrorism. Now, Putin did the same thing in 2002 with the Chechens. There was this big, this Moscow theater was seized by Chechen separatists, and Putin had a gas with something like fentanyl in it, some sort of very toxic gas pumped into the theater, killed a bunch of people, but he ended the siege. And that was the thing that gave him the public opinion necessary to just flatten Chechnya and reabsorb it into Russia. It had been part of the Soviet Union. It had been an independent country before that, much like Ukraine. And to clamp down on protest in Russia. Starting in 2003. I mean, this is when he went after Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who was the CEO of Lukoil, one of the oligarchs who had supported Putin. But in 2003, he arrested him, and that was kind of the beginning of the massive, repression against the Russian people. So, there's this long history of leaders using attacks on their countries to just enhance their popularity, but also to pass laws that reduce freedom, essentially. George W. Bush did this after 9/11 with the Patriot Act. Benjamin Netanyahu did it after October 7th in Israel. So the question in my mind is, will there be an attack against the United States? And if so, will Donald Trump use that national emergency and suspend our Constitution? And I could see it happening very easily. I think it makes perfect sense. And so my argument is that the Democratic Party in particular needs to get ready for this. They need to prepare for this. They need to be talking about this. They need to be planning for what to do should this happen. They were, really not ready for George W. Bush to politicize 9/11, but he did. And they need to be ready for this. So you can read all about it at HartmannReport.com. As I said, it's titled Reichstag Fire 2.0. Will Trump use a crisis to kill democracy? And the end of it is, stand back and stand by, right? Get ready. Meanwhile, Philadelphia Inquirer columnist Will Bunch says that Elon Musk is now the focus of much of the rage of the country. And he points to the protests happening at Tesla car dealership showrooms around the country. Were you telling me, Sean? Sean was driving by one over the weekend, and there was a whole bunch here in Portland at Tesla dealership, a bunch of people out in front protesting. A 39-year-old social worker, Matt DiCarlo, told Bunch that he was sickened by Musk throwing up the Nazi salute earlier this year. And Will Bunch writes, consider these pickets the first green shoots of an early spring uprising across America after a winter of discontented hibernation by many of the 78 million who had voted against Trump and his anti-democratic visions. He notes that there have been large protests over the last week by laid-off federal workers, by LGBTQ plus activists in New York City, furious over the scrubbing of transgender references from the Stonewall National Monument, when in fact it was the arrest of a trans person who really started Stonewall. And in Philadelphia, he writes, for the Not My President's Day. So I think it's beginning. Meanwhile, Donald Trump shut down, or is in the process of shutting down, our U.S. military base in Greece, in the city of Alexandropoli. And this has been a key logistical hub for U.S. and NATO operations in southeastern Europe. And by dismantling this, apparently at the request of Vladimir Putin, according to this report over at defense-blog.com, press reports highlight the closure is seen as a strategic loss for Greece, particularly in supporting NATO's presence in Eastern Europe. And according to Greek media, Trump's decision to dismantle a military presence in Alexandropoli came after a joint request from Russian President Vladimir Putin and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Now, of course, Turkey and Greece have been, had a low-level conflict for a long, long time. So here's Donald Trump now starting to take apart NATO. And I have not seen any stories about this on the media, monitoring CNN here in the studio. Right now, Trump is meeting with Macron. But he's not going to listen to Macron, I don't think. I mean, Macron came over here thinking he could talk some sense into Donald. Ain't going to happen. Donald Trump is either terrified of Putin or indebted to Putin or in love with Putin or wants to be Putin, or all of the above.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at ThomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at ThomHartmann.com. So check them all out at ThomHartmann.com and HartmannReport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Lords of Easy Money, How the Federal Reserve Broke the American Economy by Christopher Leonard. Now, this is from Chapter 1. It's titled Going Below Zero, and it begins our story in 2010. Thomas Hoenig, H-O-E-N-I-G, woke up early on November 3rd, 2010, knowing what he had to do that day and also knowing that he was almost certainly going to fail. He was going to cast a vote, and he was going to vote no. He was going to dissent, and he knew that this dissent would probably define his legacy. Hoenig was trying to stop something, a public policy that he believed could very well turn into a catastrophe. He believed it was his duty to do so, but the wheels were already turning to make this policy a reality, and the wheels were far more powerful than he was. The wheels were powered by the big banks on Wall Street, the stock market, and the leadership of America's Federal Reserve Bank. Everyone knew that Hoenig was going to lose that day, but he was going to vote no anyway. Hoenig was 64 years old, and he was the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, a position that gave him extraordinary power over America's economic affairs. He was in Washington that morning because he sat on the Federal Reserve's powerful policymaking committee, which met every 6 weeks to effectively determine the value and quantity of American money. Most people in America don't think very much about money, meaning the actual currency, that thing we call the dollar. The word dollar is, in fact, a slang term for American currency, which is actually called a Federal Reserve note. People spend Federal Reserve notes every day if they're lucky enough to have them, but they rarely think of a largely invisible system that makes money appear out of thin air. This system is the U.S. Federal Reserve System. The Fed, America's central bank, is the only institution on earth that can create U.S. dollars at will. Because he was a senior official at the Federal Reserve, Thomas Hoenig had to think about money all the time. He thought about it in the same way that a very stressed-out building superintendent might think about plumbing and heating. Hoenig had to think about money as a system to be managed, and to be managed just right. When you ran the system that created money, you had to do your job carefully, with prudence and integrity, or else terrible things might happen. The building might flood or catch fire. This is why Hoenig felt so much pressure when he woke up that November morning in Washington, D.C. He was staying at a very nice hotel called the Fairmont, where he always stayed when he traveled from his home in Kansas City to the nation's capital. Hoenig was in town for the regular meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC for short. When the committee met in Washington, its members voted and set the course of the Fed's actions. There were 12 members on the committee, which was run by the powerful chairman of the Federal Reserve. For a year now, Hoenig had been voting no. If he tallied his votes during 2010, they would read no, 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 and no. His dissents had become expected, but they were also startling if you consider Thom Hoenig's character. He wasn't by nature anything close to a dissident. He was a rule follower. He was born and raised in a small town where he started working at the family plumbing shop before he was 10 years old. He served as an artilleryman in Vietnam, and when he came home, he didn't protest against the war. Instead, he studied economics and banking at Iowa State, earning a Ph.D. His first job out of school was as an economist with the Federal Reserve Regional Bank in Kansas City in the supervision department. At the Fed, he went from being a rule follower to being a rule enforcer. Hoenig rose through the ranks to become president of the Kansas City Fed in 1991. This was the job he still held in 2010. His responsibilities as one of 12 regional Fed Bank presidents illuminate the structure of America's money system. The Federal Reserve is like any other in the world. It is a crazy genetic mashup of different animals, part private bank and part government agency. People talk about the Fed as if it were a bank, but it is really a network of regional banks, all controlled by a central office in Washington, D.C. Hoenig had all the fiery disposition that one might expect from a regional Fed president, which is to say none at all. He was soft-spoken, civil, wore cufflinks and pinstripe suits, and spent his days talking about things like capital requirements and interest rates. Hoenig was an institutionalist and a conservative with the little c sense of the word. And yet here he was, in late 2010, a dissident. After he woke up in his hotel room, Hoenig had some time alone before the big day started. He gathered his thoughts. He shaved, put on a suit, knotted his tie, and gathered his papers. If he had any doubts about what he was going to do that day, he didn't advertise them. He had spent months, years, even decades preparing for this action. This vote would reflect everything he'd learned during his career at the Fed. He was trying to apply what he knew to help the Federal Reserve navigate through extraordinary times. The American financial system had broken in late 2008 after the investment bank Lehman Brothers collapsed. That moment marked a threshold for people like Thom Hartmann. Economists and central bankers described the ensuing panic as the global financial crisis, eventually bestowing the moment with its own biblical label, the GFC. The world of central banking was neatly divided into two areas.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Wednesday. It's the middle of the week. Congressman Pocan is typically with us every other Wednesday, which would have been today, but he's got, got to do Congress stuff going on. So it's just going to be you and me today for all 3 hours. We've got a lot to talk about. The Department of Government Efficiency is a lie, and it might destroy us all. Say what? Also, tasers and blood literally fly at a Marjorie Taylor Greene meeting as she demonstrates to Republicans the correct way to hold a MAGA town hall. I'll share that with you in a minute, and Nate's got a little video clip for us. And the Chinese are hitting Trump where it hurts, the oligarchy. In the second hour of our program, could Maryland arrest Trump, Kristi Noem, or others involved in kidnapping Mr. Garcia? Plus, who is the president of El Salvador, really? What's going on there? Well, what is it that Americans don't know about this guy? And the election crime Republicans in North Carolina are committing right out in the open. Here we go again. And our geeky science in the second hour, nature's medicine. Can forests calm inflammatory conditions, including asthma? Seriously. In the third hour of our program, is the Supreme Court about to make a decision on whether Trump can fire the Fed chair? Just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. And Doge unemployment fraud we found unemployment fraud. We found unemployment fraud that Joe Biden found. It turns out these people are pathetic. They're so desperate to find fraud, they're stealing Biden's fraud fines. I'll tell you about that in the third hour of the program. I mean, it's just, sometimes you just look at this stuff and say, really? I mean, really? But over at HartmannReport.com, my daily take is titled, "The Department of Government Efficiency is a lie and it might destroy us all." America is under siege. And it's not foreign armies or rogue terrorists. Instead, it's unelected billionaires. Although it's possible that they are collaborating with foreign autocrats, including Vladimir Putin, who are also billionaires and thus share their rather unique authoritarian worldview. But thanks to the bravery of this whistleblower, a fellow by the name of Daniel Baroulis. I told you about this yesterday. I shared with you the story from NPR about this. And but just to amplify it, just to take it a step beyond, this isn't cheap or even ordinary corruption, the kind of stuff that happens in third world countries. Like when Ferdy Marcos in the Philippines was using cronies and spies to neutralize his political opponents, or when Vladimir Putin installed his KGB buddies at the senior levels of the Russian government, or when Guatemala's President Jimmy Morales dismantled the anti-corruption agencies in Guatemala. Now, this is the sort of corruption that destroys democracies from the inside out. And this guy, this whistleblower, risked his career, he risked his safety, even his life, to reveal what's happening inside this so-called Department of Government Efficiency, Doge. According to his bombshell disclosure, they managed to breach the National Labor Relations Board's computer systems and extract what he described as, quote, the equivalent to a section of the New York Public Library in sensitive data. This is a digital smash and grab. I mean, right out in front of everybody. And this is, and that's not, and right out of the authoritarian playbook, by the way, and that's not some crackpot theory. Shortly after the Doge operatives created accounts inside the NLRB system, so they create usernames and passwords. Minutes later, Russian operatives in Russia are coming into the Department of Labor's computer system with those same usernames and passwords.
Which raises the question, has Doge been infiltrated by Russian spies? I mean, you got a couple of people who are connected to Russia inside Doge. You've got big balls, Edward Korstein, this 19-year-old. He's the grandson of a KGB agent, Valery Martinov, who actually spied for the U.S. and was executed by the KGB, theoretically a good guy. But he was fired from a cybersecurity company for giving company documents to a competitor. A Telegram account linked to him, this is from Zev Shalev, by the way, over on Substack. A Telegram account linked to him reportedly solicited hacking services online, and he founded a company with Russian-registered domains, including one offering an AI bot for Discord targeting the Russian market. And he's been inside multiple U.S. agencies, USAID, DHS, CISA, the State Department. And then there's another Russian national with ties to Vladimir Putin. Sam Korkos is the CEO of a healthcare company tied to SpaceX, and his wife, Varvana Ruskova Korkos, according to this report, worked at GVA Capital, a venture capital front for a sanctioned Russian oligarch by the name of Suleiman Kuranov, who's a close ally of Vladimir Putin. And at Doge, this guy, whose wife has, worked for this company that's connected to Putin, attempted to, quote, retrieve detailed taxpayer and vendor information from the IRS. Now that's sort of, guilt by association. I'm not quite so hysterical about that, but something, what the hell is going on here? Something is definitely going on here if this whistleblower is accurate, and it appears he is. I mean, he says he's got 11 people who can corroborate his story. And this is the Department of Labor that they went after. This whistleblower came out yesterday. And the Department of Labor is where you've got trade secrets. It's where you've got the records of everybody in the country who is involved in union organizing, some of them under the radar. It's where you've got all the secret testimony of whistleblowers. Now, keep in mind, Elon Musk's companies were being investigated by the National Labor Relations Board for labor violations. He will not allow unions in his company. He doesn't allow dissent in his companies, essentially. He runs them like a little emperor. And so here we are. I mean, this is dangerous stuff. According to longtime employees inside the Department of Labor and other agencies, these people are not experts. Seasoned cybersecurity professionals. They're basically, some of them have worked with criminal hackers. They have no security clearances, no vetting, and yet they were given all this access. What's going on here? Is this being done on behalf of Vladimir Putin? Is Putin inside our computer? Our America's computers inside our government? I mean, if this is what it appears to be, the Rosenbergs went to the electric chair for less than this. This is a modern Watergate, but instead of burglars breaking into a filing cabinet, they're downloading gigabytes of sensitive information with a keystroke. And then when this whistleblower decides to go to the whistleblowing agency, he finds taped to the door of his apartment. And by the way, he had just recently moved. His apartment is not a public address. Nobody knows where he lives. He finds taped to the door of his apartment a threatening note and a picture of him walking his dog shot from a drone. Somebody has been surveilling this guy. I mean, this is KGB level stuff. This isn't some far off threat. If we don't stop this, it won't just be their data our data that they're coming for. It's going to be our freedom. It's going to be all of us. I am convinced that Donald Trump wants America to look like Bukele's El Salvador. And that's pretty wild stuff. In the second hour of the program, I will be detailing exactly who Mr. Bukele is. But this guy does not believe in human rights. He has tens of thousands of people locked up without any due process.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
In fact, El Salvador right now has the highest incarceration rate in the world, 1,600 per 100,000.
And welcome back. Let's pick up some calls here. Frank in Hood River, Oregon. Hey, Frank, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. People out here are confused. I'm trying to clear up if there's going to be big protests or not this Saturday.
There is.
I can't find anything online hardly.
Go to indivisible.org.
I did. And I went to 50501.
Right.
And it's just a couple real tiny scattered ones out in some remote areas of town in Portland. And there's nothing in Hood River and nothing. It says nothing for downtown Portland, nothing. And this is where the huge one was April 5th. It was great. But there's almost nothing now online.
Really?
And people out here are pretty confused. So.
Okay, I'm just find a local event, get the tools. Oh yeah, you're right. This weekend stuff has kind of vanished from the page.
Yeah.
Huh. I wonder. Let me go to 5051.one and see what they have to say. 50. Oh, I typed it in wrong. Excuse me. Okay, let's see what.
I know it's a hard one.
50. Next National Day of Action, April 19th. Find an event. What's your zip code?
Well, I went to the one in Portland before, but Hood River is 97041. Just dial 97214. That's the big one for Portland downtown. That should list Portland downtown, and they don't.
Huh. Yeah. Well, April 9th at 3 p.m. Rise Up for Climate Justice Earth Day rally, and but yeah, you're right. Huh. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah. I hope MAGA isn't sabotaging communication somehow.
Well, it could just be that there's, this thing has not had anything close to as much advanced publicity. And so it may be that they're just, geez, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know what's happening with that.
They should advertise it massively. I mean, because they had a huge turnout before because, people knew about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Frank, I don't know what's going on. I will try to find out and report back, okay?
Okay, thanks
for the call.
For your listeners. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
George in Crystal Lake, Illinois. Hey, George, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. First, I'd just like to build on what your listeners been saying this week about bringing a flag to protest and wearing MAGA hats. I think we should also bring those flags. Don't tread on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
they appropriate all of their iconography.
Right. Right. But I was calling about, Trump giving all cyber intelligence to Trump, and who knows how many Russian spies this guy's letting in. And God willing, what will the next Democratic president be able to do? Because Russia's going to do something as soon as the next Democratic president is in.
Well, my concern is that if Donald Trump gets in serious trouble during his presidency, that his various autocratic friends, led by Mr. Putin, might help start a war somewhere. I mean, just to distract us all. Wars are one of the favorite things of dictators. So, I think that's a very serious concern. George, I got to run, but thanks for the call. Good point. Excellent point. Thank you. We'll be right back. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. A lot of people wonder, where did this whole right-wing movement to basically gut our freedoms and end DEI and all this other, where did this all begin? It all started back in 1951 with a book called The Conservative Mind, From Burke to Eliot by Russell Kirk. And he argued that if the middle class ever got too big, you'd see young people and women and racial minorities all get up on their hind feet and start protesting and basically screwing up America. And in the 50s, you know, even Republicans thought he was nuts. But then the 60s happened and all those protests, and suddenly Republicans thought, yeah, he's right. We've got to destroy the middle class, or at least cut it back. And that was Reagan's mandate when he came into office in 1981. There's a whole article about this. You can read all the details. It's titled, "The GOP's 60-Year Conspiracy to Kill Our Democracy. None dare call it treason, but I will," over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
They came in through the back door. No badge, no name, no oath. Just billionaires in boardrooms, writing laws for both. They say it's for the people to streamline and revise, but the Department of Government Efficiency is a lie. They gutted every watchdog, rewrote every rule. The fox is in the hen house, and he's building up a school for loyalists and hackers with Putin on the line. Our whistleblowers vanish, and the rest just toe the line. Yeah, the Department of Government Efficiency is a lie, a front for the billionaires reaching for the sky. They stole the soul of labor with a keystroke and a smile. Now they're watching from the shadows. They've rigged the die. Heard a worker tried to organize, his name just disappeared. Buried in a database, the oligarchs commandeered. 10 gigabytes of silence, one brave man defied. And drones are now his neighbors with notes that chill the spine. They don't need tanks, they don't need guns. They've got logins, drones, and smoking guns. With every leak and stolen bite, they twist the law into the right.
Welcome back. 22 minutes past the hour. Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know how Bernie and AOC are out there showing Democrats how to do a town hall, right? And Mark Pocan years ago, I mean, back when Paul Ryan was Speaker of the House and represented the district next door to Mark Pocan's, Mark Pocan and Paul Ryan refused to do town halls. Of course, this, you know, Republicans, this has been a Republican thing for decades. Occasionally they'll do town halls, but generally speaking, you know, they have no interest in the little people. They just want the money from the big corporations and the billionaires. So anyhow, Mark Pocan used to go into the district, into Paul Ryan's district, and do town halls there, as I recall, in Janesville, Wisconsin, and come on this program and talk about it. I mean, you know, Mark's been on this program for about a decade now, and so we have these wonderful examples on the Democratic side of how to do a town hall. Well, over on the Republican side, Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to do the same thing. She's trying to show MAGA legislators, Republican legislators who've been told, don't have town halls, be afraid, you know, don't talk to the people. And she said, screw that, I'm going to show you guys how to do it. And so she did. She, you know, she had people, well, I think Nate's got some video, and I'm assuming there's some audio attached to it. You want to play whatever you think is the best one here, Nate?
Ladies and gentlemen, they're all inside the interior of the United States.
How about the KKK?
All inside the interior of the United States.
The terrorist group going after black and
You can head out. The protest is outside. Thank you very much. Protest is outside.
You want money, bigot! You want money, bigot!
And you can see they're dragging this person out. I mean, you know, this is they dragged multiple people out. There's another one.
Are you really doing this? Stop. Stop. Are you really doing it? Stop. Are you really doing it?
One guy ended up, this guy ends up bloody. Another guy ends up tased. And he's down on the ground, and they're zapping him with a taser.
Now, this is a peaceful town.
Right, and yeah, this is just, I mean, this is crazy. Fry the dissenters with 50,000 volts. And by the way, she didn't take any questions from the audience. They all had to be written in advance. And they put them up on a screen and she would answer. I mean, this is like something out of the old Soviet Union. I'm just astonished. What I'm wondering, no live mic, no chance for real pushback. This is a tightly controlled circus where she can preen and perform for the MAGA faithful. And I'm wondering if the Republicans are going to pick up on this. Hey, yeah, let's, have security, have people tase people, beat people. This guy gets his face smashed in against the wall. He's got blood all over his face. And the people are cheering? This is where we're at now? Marjorie Taylor Greene, she absolutely loves this idea, apparently, of violence against her own voters, or at least her own constituents. I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see if Republicans adopt this. I mean, this is just a logical variation on the way that Trump responded to the protests in Lafayette Square. Remember that during his last term as president, when he asked General Milley to shoot the protesters in the legs, and Milley refused to do it. But they did bring in a helicopter and they used tear gas to clear the square, which were both illegal. But, Trump got away with it completely because he gets away with everything. He's never been held accountable for anything in his life. And Marge figures, same deal for me, right? It's incredible. Meanwhile, you don't need a tariff, you need a revolution. Say the Chinese to us. Say what? I'll tell you about that right after the break and pick up your calls. What's on your mind? Stick around. It is 27 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Speaking the truth, big balls would really rather you didn't know all about. I'll be right back with your calls. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Libya and the Global Enduring Disorder by Jason Pack. And this is from the preface, titled Welcome to the Enduring Disorder. Today's international system is like a ship adrift during a pandemic. With the captain lost to the virus and the most capable and conscientious members of the crew self-isolating in their cabins, the deck is now teeming with contagious megalomaniacs. Rather than collaborate, each thinks he knows how to steer the ship better than the admirals. As the winds pick up, a fight breaks out among those scrambling to infiltrate the bridge. When the winners emerge from this melee and they reach the captain's chair, some choose to deliberately steer into the choppiest waters, each clutching the steering wheel until a competitor bursts in behind them and ejects them from the hot seat. As the vessel craters from stem to stern, those with fainter constitutions or a greater respect for the competency hierarchy have simply chosen to retire to their cabins. Will the crew eventually reemerge from their quarters to put the technocrats back in charge? Might the most reckless passenger subjugate the others, lock the convalescent crew members in their quarters, and emerge as the new de facto captain? Or should some sort of self-sustaining equilibrium have been reached with the vessel zigging and zagging indefinitely, neither capsizing nor reaching port? From my vantage point, watching U.S. policy toward Libya veer this way and that over the years, the events of the spring and summer of 2019 stood out as a high watermark of chaos and contradiction, with a multiplicity of relevant actors vying for prominence. They were also representative, in microcosm, of larger global trends. Witnessing them led me to question my assumptions about the West's future role in the world and the fundamental principles underpinning the international system. It was dawning on me that the contemporary ship of state had become permanently unmoored, careening back and forth due to contradictory decisions undertaken by ill-coordinated power centers. Plato envisioned such a scenario in The Republic. He warned that true democracy would lead to populism. Contempt for experts would ensue, eventually culminating in short-sighted and reversal-prone approaches to policy formation.
He also warned that once this point was reached, it would be nearly impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. Over the past few years, my day-to-day experience of the foreign policy-making process in Washington, London, and Tunis, and the resulting outcomes in Libya, seem to be embodying Plato's forecasts. In keeping with this observation, this book proposes that the international system has exited the post-Cold War period with its well-established features and dynamics and entered a new historical epoch termed the enduring disorder. This new historical period, which remains under-researched, is characterized by its own structures, trends, and interactions. They are not scientific laws that can be definitely discovered through experimentation, but rather patterns and trend lines that may be intuited from lived experience. My main contentions about our historical moment are interrelated. One, that the international system's interaction with Libya is an ideal arena to describe the key features of this new historical era, but that study of the Syrian, Yemeni, Venezuelan, or Ukrainian microcosms would likely work as well. And two, that the enduring disorder will long outlast the specific sequence of events set in motion by former American President Donald Trump or any given Libyan warlord. My analysis is that their emergence on the world stage was merely symptomatic of the enduring disorder, not its root cause. Actually, it is the enduring disorder that has given rise to Trump, Brexit, and the unique trajectories of state implosion that have befallen Libya, Yemen, and Syria. On the ground in Libya in May of 2019, the latest round of civil war had settled into an uneasy stalemate. Economic activity was stymied. The water and electricity grids were periodically shut down by the combatants. Civilian casualties mounted, and international peacemaking efforts had ground to a halt. The previously bustling southern suburbs of Tripoli were now crisscrossed by the ebb and flow of tanks and technicals. A parallel war of maneuver was also unfolding on the banks of the Potomac. The allies of President Trump sought to outflank the permanent institutions of the U.S. government in the tussle to shape American policy toward Libya's perpetual conflict. This was yet another skirmish between familiar adversaries. In the prior battles between Team Trump and U.S. institutions that set various aspects of Russia, Ukraine, and the Middle Eastern policy, each side had already demonstrated its unique strengths and weaknesses. This dynamic of Team Trump versus the institutions would become intimately familiar to all Americans during the tug of war to set the governmental response to the COVID pandemic. So what were the relative tactics of the adversaries? Trump's Twitter bravado was highly effective at manipulating the media, but usually quite impotent at formally changing entrenched U.S. government policies. Was the president actually trying to change American policy, but exhibiting a lack of understanding of the tools open to the executive branch? Or was he achieving his aim simply by stirring confusion, creating uncertainty, and preventing coherent coordination with America's allies? The book Libya and the Global Enduring Disorder by Jason Fact. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, thom.tv. Check it out.
Chairs weren't warm and the lights weren't dim when Marge took the mic and the room turned grim. A feller in plaid yelled boo with sass, so cops flew in and tased his freedom of class. Is this the correct MAGA way? Tase a man who don't pray or obey. Drag him out with a stun gun flare. Town hall's now a county fair. Clap your hands if the scene gets fried. That's freedom, y'all electrified. Oh!
Yeah, that's what Marge did. Yep. Shoot him with a taser. Amazing. So my old buddy Thomas Newberger, who used to blog under the name Publius years ago, he's kind of come out now. And he published a piece over on Substack, newberger.substack.com yesterday, talking about how, he says, back when I was a scamp, one of the jobs I had was in high tech. And he talks about, going over to China, him and his allies, the people who in his office, and how when they went to China, they would go to the, some of the retail, the street sellers, or even the Nike factory, for example. Nike was making their shoes there, apparently. And he said, you could buy a pair of Nikes for $5, that would sell for $100 here. Now, this was, a decade or more ago. And so basically the shoes are $5, and they didn't have the Nike logo on them, but they were the same identical shoes. They just hadn't yet put, glued the logo on and or stitched it on. And without the logo, they were $5. With the logo, they were $100. So basically, what you're paying for in most cases is the what you might call the intellectual property. So now China is producing videos of Chinese people pointing this out, saying, here's your Nike for $5 here in China. Come on over and buy them. And people are literally going to Hong Kong or other Chinese cities and coming back with suitcases full of stuff because they can buy a $200 pair of shoes for $10 over there, which is close to its actual value, and then bring them back here and sell them for $150, sell them for a big discount. And one of these Chinese citizens who did one of these videos, he says, your oligarchs told you to be proud while they sold your future for profit. What did your oligarchs do? They bought yachts, private jets, mansions with golf course driveways. For 40 years, both China and the United States benefited from the trade, the manufacturing, but only one of us used that wealth to build. This isn't China's fault, it's yours. You let your oligarchs feed you lies while they made you fat, poor, and addicted. America, he says, you don't need a tariff, you need a revolution. You think? I just find this fascinating. China is pushing back, and a lot of this is showing up on TikTok, of course, which China ultimately controls. China is pushing back on Trump's tariffs in a big way, and this is just amazing. It's a thing to behold. So what's on your mind today? Alexander in Brick Township, New Jersey. Hey, Alexander, thanks for listening to SiriusXM. What's up?
Hi, I'm still worried about how things are in regards to voc rehab for the disabled due to Project 2025. I'm just under stress about how long it's going to be before funding is all dried up for that.
Are these programs that are run through the Department of Education through Title IX, or are these, or Title X, I forget which one it is, that deals with disabled people, or are these separate programs?
Those are Department of Ed.
Yeah, well, the Department of Ed has been largely disbanded, or they're in the process of it. I can't specifically answer your question. I don't know the details, Alexander. I'd have to look it up. It would be a good question to, ask one of the search engines. But I don't think that we can plan on things like, vocational rehabilitation, or even for that matter, vocational education, the old shop classes that we used to have, those kinds of things. I don't think we can plan on that stuff persisting because, hey, that's for average working people or people who have had, the misfortune of having an injury or a birth defect or something like that. And,
or people who were born with a disability who need the supports in order to find work.
Yeah, my point. And I shouldn't call it a birth defect, but
myself, for example.
Yeah, no, I totally get it, Alexander, and that's the point. Elon Musk and Donald Trump don't give a damn about people like you. They really don't. In fact, they think of us as useless eaters if we're not MAGA.
It's pitiful that what they're plotting against people with disabilities with service reductions and everything.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
This is just pure evil. What's going on with the Department of Government Efficiency? It's really really destroyed most of everything that we've come to know with services and everything.
I agree, and they're only 3 months into it. I mean, there's more to come, presumably. They've already destroyed USAID. So, Alexander, thank you for the call. Spot on. Marie in Atlanta. Hey, Marie, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call. Just real quick on Margie Taylor Greene's little fiasco up in
How's it playing in the Atlanta media? Are they lionizing her or condemning her or just straight reporting?
There's just straight reporting. They're not particularly, now bear in mind, I don't watch Fox, so who knows? Yeah. But on the three main network stations, they're not. They reported it, which is it's a start. Yeah. But no, they didn't say it was good or a bad outcome.
Interesting.
But it reminds me of my favorite saying about Cobb County. It's easy to spell, 2 B's, 3 K's.
Say that. I'm sorry, I missed that. Say it again.
I said it reminds me of my favorite saying about Cobb County. Easy to spell, 2 B's, 3 K's.
Oh, I see 2 B's, 3 K's. Yeah. Having lived in Cobb County for the better part of a decade, I totally get what you're talking about. Yeah.
But the reason I called was I wanted to reframe this idea. I've been thinking about Elon and his assertion that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. Mm-hmm. Okay, we all understand the most recent, most notorious Ponzi scheme is what Bernie Madoff did, and it was a classic Ponzi scheme. First in, make money, and then they refer others, and there's this exclusivity which makes it attractive. He doesn't just accept everybody.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it depends upon the person who is invited to participate accepting the invitation. Social Security, by comparison, is compulsory. From your first paycheck as a W-2 employee, that money comes out. And the only reason people don't fight the fact that they're getting less than what they actually earned is because they are promised that it will come back to them.
Correct.
That's not voluntary. That's not a Ponzi scheme.
No, it's clearly, a retirement
Elon
program.
Doesn't know what a Ponzi. Exactly. So clearly, Elon doesn't understand what a Ponzi scheme is. And when people say these things to us, I think we need to talk about it in those terms. No, a Ponzi scheme is voluntary. Yeah. At some point, the person who gets snookered out of their money ends up having to face the fact that they volunteered their money to participate. And that's not how Social Security works.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, except the fact that Elon Musk doesn't know what a Ponzi scheme is. I think he knows perfectly well what a Ponzi scheme is. He just loves telling lies, when they serve his purposes. And
of course, people aren't going to stop and they're not going to question him or think that deeply about what a Ponzi scheme is and how it's.
Well, they have no means to question him. He's not an elected official. He doesn't do town halls. He doesn't answer to questions. He doesn't do press reports. He's an unelected billionaire who's pulling the strings behind the scenes. Excellent point, though, Marie. Thank you so much for calling and making it. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom, as the Trump administration stands in open defiance of a court order from the highest court in the land, I think we may more than suggest, but rightly assert that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is dead. And so are all of the others who were sent to, migrants who were sent to El Salvador illegally by abridging their Fifth Amendment rights to due process. And certainly Mr. Garcia is now being denied his right to habeas corpus. And the only possible, we don't need to get, the Trump administration has lost the entitlement to benefit of the doubt. The Justice Department has said that Garcia is secure, but the Justice Department is part of the accessories to this crime.
Yep.
Donald Trump and Nayib Bukele are accomplices in mass murder of these migrants, and the administration officials are accessories to these crimes against humanity. There is no way, there's no reason why they would not return Mr. Garcia. If Donald Trump thinks he's so powerful, yet he brags about getting a ballerina released from Russia prison, but he says he can't get somebody back who he just sent and paid $6 million for to send to Bukele's torture camp, which, by the way, is a violation of human rights.
I get your points, Paul. I respectfully disagree. Number one, I don't think that Trump initiated getting the ballerina back. I don't think he gave a damn about the ballerina. We were holding a Russian guy who was a spy and an arms trader that Putin desperately wanted back. And I'd bet anything Putin was the guy who said, hey, give us that guy and I'll give you this ballerina and you'll have some good PR, number one. Number two, I don't think any of those people are dead.
That's not my point.
I get it. I don't think any of those people are dead. I think that this is Donald Trump saying, see, I can ignore the law. I think that's the point here. The point is Donald Trump telling us that he is now the emperor. He is now in control.
No, Tom, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. The point is we may, as one stands in defiance, open defiance of a court order, they are defiance of what's compelling, the doctrine of compelling equity. You have to come to court with clean hands. Otherwise, the burden of proof is on you to show that this person is still alive.
Yeah, you're making my point. He's ignoring the law. He's gleefully ignoring the law. This is Donald Trump telling us that he's no longer a president. He is now a dictator. That this is no longer a democratic republic. This is now a dictatorship.
Why do you think he's not alive? Why do you think that Garcia is still alive? You have no evidence to show that.
Well, because I don't think that there would be any percentage in killing any of these guys. I think Bukele is going to, number one, he's going to want to continue to take money from us to hold them. That $6 million was just for the first year. And number two, something might happen where he has to produce them again. I just don't see where he would have.
He has to produce them now, Tom. He was just here in this country. He has to produce them now. That's what the Supreme Court said.
I get that, Paul. I get that, Paul. But I think both Bukele and Trump, as dictators, get a whole lot more benefit from saying, yeah, screw you guys. We're ignoring the law here officially. We're officially ignoring the law than just killing people. As evil as they are, I can easily believe that they would, but I think I don't think that would serve their purposes.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
47 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls. And welcome back. And to Paul's call, we will probably find out shortly if Mr. Garcia is still alive, because Chris Van Hollen just arrived in El Salvador. So, as United States Senator. So let's see how that plays out. Roy in Des Plaines, Illinois. Hey, Roy, what's up?
Yeah, hi, Tom. I just want to get your thought on a couple of things. The Democratic messaging has been, Trump. I really think they need to make a shift and actually go after the whole Republican Party itself.
I agree.
He
couldn't do this if just a handful of Republicans in the House or Senate or both stood up against him. It would stop him cold.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then the other thing I just wanted to get your comments on is, those press briefings by Carolyn Leavitt are just horrible.
Yeah.
I'd really like to see somebody from one of the media outlets fact check her real time and outright call her a liar.
Yeah. It makes you long for someone, for Sean Spicer, for some of the previous press secretaries, Kellyanne Conway.
That would happen. Yeah, because that would happen real time, right? It would be out there, And that's really all I had, Tom.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. This is not just Donald Trump. This is the corruption of an entire political party by a large handful of right-wing billionaires who don't believe in America, who don't believe in democracy, and frankly think that they would do much better in an autocracy than in a democratic society. Roy, thank you. Paul in Ambler, Pennsylvania. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to talk about Governor Josh Shapiro. He's the governor of Pennsylvania, I think as everybody knows at this point, it looks like it's a worldwide story, was attacked with fire bombs, Molotov cocktails, and the pretty secure governor's mansion was breached by a lone individual, and he did quite a bit of damage.
Yeah,
in the room
who
where
looks eerily like Stephen Miller, only with a beard.
he looks like Stephen Miller. I don't want to belabor this story because there's more to come out. It's barely more than 24 hours old, but it looks like the local news is reporting it has something to do with his animosity towards Josh Shapiro and Palestine and Gaza. So something seems to be upsetting him. And the guy's got other problems. He's currently wrapped up in some kind of assault case against his kid and his wife. And, it sounds like his life is a mess.
I think he's just, generically mentally ill.
Well, probably brought about by financial woes and a whole host of other
MAGA
things.
propaganda, who knows? But yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll find out. The main point is I wanted to talk about Josh. I've been a committeeman in Abington Township in Pennsylvania. I'm not living there currently, but I was there for about 20 years. And he was somebody I would see on a regular basis. He was the commissioner, the chairman of the Commission of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, which has close to 900,000 people. So it's a considerable job. It's like
We're just
running
about
a
out of
city.
time here. Was he a good guy?
He was a good guy, but I think that you're going to find that there's going to be a fifth column marching against billionaires and MAGA types, the likes of which they won't know what hit them. And I'm talking about a litigation strategy. I'm talking about political choke points. I'm talking about finding out the dirty laundry, and we're making people's lives
Let's hope
ruined.
so, Paul. I'm sorry, I'm out of time, but let's hope so. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So remember the John Durham investigation in which he said, the FBI never should have looked into Donald Trump's connections to Russia. And I'm scratching my head going, how can he even think this? I mean, the guy that Donald Trump hired as his first campaign manager, Paul Manafort had taken $66 million from oligarchs associated with Vladimir Putin to install Viktor Yanukovych as the dictator of Ukraine. $66 million. He took money from, he was paid $1 million by the dictator of Zaire, back when it was Zaire, to develop a strong relationship with Moscow. And when finally they threw Yanukovych out of Ukraine, that was in 2015, what did Manafort do? He came to the United States and he said to Donald Trump, well, let me help you, while he's taking money from Moscow. I mean, if nothing else, that should have been a starting point, a huge starting point for the FBI. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
There is a house in Washington they call the Fallen One. It's filled with gold and grievance, and it's poisoned what we've done. My mother taught me justice. My father spoke of grace. But now that house has traded both for rage and a red hat face.
4 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Sean tells me that we have breaking news right now that a judge is holding somebody in the Trump administration around Mr. Garcia. I'll dig into this over the next couple of minutes. We're going to hit a break here in about a minute and a half, and I'll let you know on the other side of the break what's going on. But it looks like there might be breaking news, or there is breaking news in this story. Brian in Milford, Delaware. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Hey, and wow to what you just said, by the way. I can't wait to tell myself. I just watched, and how you doing, Tom?
Hey,
I just
good.
watched this crazy press conference or whatever it was with the RFK Jr. on autism.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to give you some of the highlights if you weren't watching. It kind of came on right before.
I wasn't.
You,
go for it.
Yeah, well, first, one thing he said autism is a preventable disease. Well, disease, and he declared an epidemic. Which
autism is not a disease. Autism is a condition people are born with.
Trust me, he's labeling it as an epidemic. He said it 1,000 times during it. And then he said, there were studies. He had these studies where kids were fully functional, then they regressed into autism. And this is, and I was like, I can't imagine the people in the audience, like, what in the world? And he said, he talked about the kids are, these are taxes, never hold a job, never play basketball, never write a poem, never go out on a date, and never use a toilet unassisted. He's talking about autistic kids. And he's saying this at like a press conference. I'm like, what in the world is going on here?
Yeah.
He just did this.
Well, he's been doing this song and dance for years and years. Yeah, I mean, autism typically shows up, not the most severe forms, but the debilitating forms typically show up around the age of 2. Which is around the time that people get the MMR vaccines. And so for a long time, people thought, oh, they got the vaccine and then they started behaving like they were autistic, when in fact, that's just the developmental point at which autism typically appears. It has nothing to do with the vaccine. But Bob Kennedy has been selling this pitch for years and years.
Yeah, this is the same guy, exactly. This is the same guy who you saw in the, he did an interview where he said, the interview was like, they're making like $11 billion in cuts. He's like, no, they told me that was a bunch of DEI stuff. He's like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, he doesn't know what's going on in his own department. I think a lot of these, I've said this before, Donald Trump is not running an administration, he's running a show. And he wants people who have big names or are telegenic or know how to perform for the cameras or are willing to kiss his ass and slobber all over him in public. And that's his only criteria. He's not looking for competent people. He's not looking for people who know how to run large organizations. He's not looking for people with public health. Bob Kennedy is not a public health guy. He's a lawyer. And, so anyway, Brian, thank you. Thanks for the report on that. I appreciate it. We'll be back on the other side of this break. I'll update you on what's going on with this contempt case, too. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising support wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Stokely, A Life by Peniel E. Joseph. This is from the preface. Stokely Carmichael is a troubling icon of America's civil rights years. His Black Power call became a national Rorschach test. Whereas many blacks viewed it as righteous, many whites saw violent foreboding. Newspapers brooded over Carmichael's words, quickly forming a consensus that judged the slogan to be at best intemperate and at worst a blatant call for anti-white violence and reverse racism. In 1966, Black power reverberated around the world, galvanizing blacks, outraging whites, and inspiring a cross-section of ethnic and racial minorities. In 1969, Carmichael left the United States for Conakry, Guinea, where he reinvented himself as a roving Pan-Africanist organizer and professional revolutionary. For the next 30 years, he remained an energetic dissident, a throwback to the heady years of the 1960s. Carmichael turned the quest for black political power into his life's work. His faith in a style of politics many considered anachronistic came out of the same tenacity and stubbornness that once made him one of the most effective and controversial activists of his generation. These same qualities, however, limited Carmichael's efforts as a Pan-Africanist political mobilizer. Before leaving America, Stokely resigned as Black Power's glamorous enfant terrible. Telegenic, brash, equal parts angry and gregarious, whether dressed in three-piece suits, leather jackets, sharecroppers' overhauls, or African dashikis, Carmichael became to represent the era's multifaceted identity, a hipster hero whose easy grace allowed him to consort effortlessly with both the dignified and the damned. The name Stokely Carmichael first came into my consciousness when I was a young boy coming of age in New York City. As the proud son of a Haitian mother who belonged to local 1199 Hospital Workers Union, part of SEIU, I grew up hearing stories of how civil rights activists, Black Power revolutionaries, Pan-Africanist freedom fighters, and trade unionists helped to shape a new world in America and beyond. By the time I was in elementary school, I was on my first picket line, accompanying my mother in support of an 1199 strike. Both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King supported 1199 during the 1960s. Stokely Carmichael's political importance came into sharper focus when I was in junior high after the premiere of the landmark PBS documentary series Eyes on the Prize, which featured the 24-year-old Carmichael's fiery Black Power speech and rightly characterized Stokely as his generation's heir to Malcolm X. Over the course of a decade of research on Carmichael, I would come to understand him as that and much more. Carmichael's youth, casual dress, and charisma made him an easily identifiable hero, one whose quick smile and passionate speeches left an indelible impression. An adopted son of the South by way of Trinidad, the Bronx, and Harlem, Stokely adapted to while transforming whatever environment he encountered. As a native New Yorker growing up in the city's tense racial climate of the 1980s, I found Carmichael's survival instincts appealing. As a young graduate student in Philadelphia, I had the opportunity to hear him speak and briefly met him afterward. He encouraged me to stay committed to the Black freedom movement, a struggle he defined as infinite. With his flowing African robes, gray hair, and white beard, he looked like a prince. And he had changed his name. He was no longer Stokely Carmichael. As Malcolm Little had become Malcolm X and later El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Stokely had become Kwame Ture. It was a name that paid homage to his two African heroes, men who had been the first presidents of their countries, Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah and Guinea's Sekou Touré. Kwame Ture spelled the Guinean's name not as the French did, as white Europeans did, but as Arabs and Muslims did. Sekou Touré, S-E-K-U-T-U-R-E. As a college student, Carmichael helped transform America by organizing sit-ins, demonstrations, and voter registrations during the civil rights movement's heroic years, a period that roughly encompasses the decade between the 1954 Brown v. Board Supreme Court decision, desegregation decision, and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and has become enshrined in public memory through national holidays, films, commemorations, and monuments. Carmichael's deep sense of justice contributed to his evolution into Kwame Ture, the Pan-Africanist revolutionary and anti-capitalist organizer who moved to West Africa and remained tenacious in the face of searing political setbacks. Carmichael ultimately judged America incapable of creating the free and just world he had struggled for as a young man. But despite living in Africa for the final 30 years of his life, Carmichael's legendary stature as a black power activist lingered even if many ignored his lasting contributions to civil rights struggles that included a bruising quest for the vote in the Deep South. Although today largely forgotten, Stokely Carmichael remains one of the protean figures of the 20th century, a revolutionary who passionately believed in self-defense and armed rebellion, even as he revered nonviolence. The book Stokely, A Life, by Peniel L. Joseph.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. So Judge Boasberg, the guy who first ruled that Mr. Garcia and 250 some odd other people could not be deported. He was the original judge who said, turn those planes around. And Marco Rubio and dictator Bukele down in El Salvador said, oops, we just somehow missed that, Anyhow, he says he just ruled this just minutes ago. He said, quote, the court ultimately determines that the government's actions on that day demonstrate a willful disregard for its order, sufficient for the court to conclude that probable cause exists to find the government in criminal contempt. Now, that means somebody could go to jail. It's unlikely he's going to go after Trump for this. The Supreme Court has granted Trump absolute immunity, but he could certainly go after little Marco, or he could, more likely, he'll go after the lawyers who are standing in front of him. He adds, the court does not reach such conclusion lightly or hastily. Indeed, it has given Democrats ample opportunity to rectify or explain their actions. None of their responses have been satisfactory. He also pointed to Marco Rubio's social media posts and said the Constitution does not tolerate willful disobedience of judicial orders, especially by officials of a coordinate branch who have sworn. Keep in mind, Judge Boasberg he was a conservative judge. He's a member of the Federalist Society. He was appointed to the bench by George W. Bush. Pam Bondi then goes on Fox News, our Attorney General Barbie here, and she says, Judge Boasberg is meddling in our government. Our government? I didn't know it was your government, Pam. I thought it was everybody's government. Anyway, she says, and the question should be, why is the judge trying to protect terrorists who invaded our country over American citizens? Garcia was not a terrorist, and he didn't invade our country. He's here with our permission. He was here legally. He is the father of 3 American children. He is the husband of an American wife. He has permission to work here. He's a union member. He's a sheet rental apprentice. The people he works with say he's one of the best employees ever. His employers want him back. It's incredible. Meanwhile, U.S. District Court Judge Paula Zinnes ran out of patience yesterday and said that she's going to order a 2-week inquiry into this thing. She's going to give the government 2 more weeks. I think, frankly, that's way too much time, but, I get, the justice moves slowly, but it moves. She ordered the administration to arrange for Garcia's return. And she said, to date, the record, she's talking to the government lawyer, and she says, to date, the record shows that nothing has been done. Nothing. She says, we're going to move. There are no business hours while we do this. Cancel vacations, cancel other appointments. I'm usually pretty good about things like that in my court, but not this time, so I expect all hands on deck. She described an intense 2-week expedited discovery schedule where his attorneys have the ability to, Garcia's attorneys have the ability to subpoena documents, send interrogatory requests, and subpoena up to 2 additional people. And she named 4 senior officials from the Department of Homeland Security who have to show up in person to testify over the next 2 weeks. Meanwhile, my old buddy Richard Green, the civics dean.substack.com is his website. Richard used to be one of he used to host a weekend show on Air America, which is where I first met Richard. I've known Richard for years. He's a good guy. and he's an attorney. And he's pointing to this law, it's Maryland Criminal Code 3-502. And it states, now keep in mind, Garcia lived in Maryland before he was abducted by ICE and deported to El Salvador. It's the law, the Maryland law says, quote, a person may not, by force or fraud, carry or cause a person to be carried in or outside the state with the intent to have that person carried or concealed in or outside the state. A person who violates this section is guilty of the felony of kidnapping and on conviction is subject to imprisonment not exceeding 30 years. And my old buddy Richard says, Maryland Attorney General Anthony G. Brown and or Prince George's County District Attorney Aisha Braveboy could absolutely arrest and prosecute Donald Trump for violation of Maryland's kidnapping laws. Now, on that, I'm skeptical. I don't think that they could arrest Donald Trump, and nor do I think that they would. But I do think that they could demand the names of the ICE agents who showed up and kidnapped this guy. And they could go after Thom Hartmann and anybody in the chain of command. Richard goes on to say, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, and Stephen Miller kidnapped Kilmar Garcia off the streets of an American city, Beltsville, Maryland, and without any constitutional due process, took him by force outside of Maryland and outside the United States. That's kidnapping by any definition. And he gives the phone number for the Attorney General of Maryland and for the Prince George's County District Attorney. I'm not going to read them on the air, but you can look them up easily. And says, call them and demand that they arrest somebody from the Trump administration for kidnapping. He says there's also a way to charge the president of El Salvador, Bukele, for aiding and abetting the kidnapping, and that they should do that as well. He points out that Maryland is one of the original 13 states that participated in, writing and demanding the Bill of Rights, which this is a clear violation of. Meanwhile, who is this Bukele guy? He's 43 years old. He claims he's the youngest dictator in the world. He calls himself the world's coolest dictator. He likes to wear aviator sunglasses. He likes to produce rap videos of prisoners being tortured. In 2019, he was elected to the presidency based on a promise to end gang violence and corruption. And he did. The homicides dropped from 103 per 100,000 down to 2.4. That was in 2015, to a record low of 2.4 per 100,000 in 2023. So he has an 80% approval rating for doing that across the country of El Salvador. But the miracle came at a staggering cost. He didn't eradicate crime through, solving problems that fester crime like poverty. He eradicated crime by dismantling democracy. This is from a piece by Dean Blundell over at Substack. He scrapped due process. He instilled paralyzing fear in El Salvador's 6.3 million people. He's a textbook authoritarian. I mean, this is just amazing stuff. This is the guy that Donald Trump was slobbering all over yesterday in the White House. Since declaring a state of emergency in March, or the day before yesterday, in March of 2022, Bukele has arrested over 85,000 people, roughly 1.6% of the population of his country, often without warrants or evidence. Human Rights Watch reports only 1,000 convictions, meaning tens of thousands of innocent people are languishing in prison. At least 261 have died in custody, with credible reports of torture, beatings, and medical neglect. The Center for Confinement of Terrorism, CCOT, this is where these Americans are being held, is not a rehabilitation facility. It's a pay-for-play concentration camp where prisoners, including U.S. deportees, are disappeared into a judicial black hole, writes Dean Blundell. CCOT opened in 2023. It's a mega prison for 40,000 inmates. Cells lack windows, ventilation, or mattresses. Prisoners sleep on bare metal and eat twice daily and endure 23-and-a-half-hour lockdowns with only 30 minutes of exercise in windowless corridors. Human rights groups document systematic torture, scabies, starvation, beatings are rampant. Crystal Sol, a Salvadoran non-governmental organization, reports 367 deaths across the prison system, with families denied information about their loved ones. Bukele's propaganda, he writes, glorifies this cruelty. He posts slick videos of shackled inmates, heads bowed, escorted by armed guards to a pulsating soundtrack, Images straight out of a dystopian thriller. He took 261 U.S. deportees last month. CBS News looked into them. They found 75% of these deportees had no criminal record. They committed no crime. And yet they are now trapped in this brutal concentration camp. And, you know, the definition, according to the U.S. Holocaust Museum, of a concentration camp is a prison beyond the rule of law, a place where people are imprisoned without due process of law. And that's exactly what he is running. He is running a concentration camp, and we are sending people to it. Dean Bladel writes, like Stalin's labor camp, Sikhat uses prisoners for forced labor to sustain itself, with Bukele boasting it's financially self-sufficient. He puts some of them to work. He says, like Mussolini, he projects strength through militarized displays, replacing judges with loyalists. In 2021, his party ousted the Supreme Court justices and the Attorney General and installed his loyalists. He's jailed critics, including his former security advisor, who died in custody in February of last year, allegedly after being tortured. Politicians, judges, and journalists face ruthless and relentless intimidation. Over 50 official and critics have fled the country. In 2020, he sent troops into the legislature to strong-arm approval of a piece of legislation that he wanted. His state of emergency suspends fundamental rights, no warrants, no lawyers, no contact with families. Amnesty International reports forced disappearances. Women face sexual violence in custody, and families of detainees are threatened with arrest for protesting. He's also targeted minorities with reports of arbitrary arrests of queer individuals. In 2021, he fired all the judges over 60, affecting 200 magistrates, a third, 33% of the judiciary. His new judges rubber stamp his policies like a mass trial of 900 people at once. Yeah, that's due process for you. His political opponents face trumped-up charges, while business leaders are squeezed for money and loyalty. This is a country that has a 30% poverty rate, which has not improved since he became president. Instead, they have the highest incarceration rate in the world. Keep in mind that the United States is around 700 per 100,000, as I recall, 650, something like that. We are the highest in the developed world. He is at 1,600 people. He's got 109,000 people behind bars in this little tiny country. Fear permeates societies. Dissenters risk arrest. Families of the detained lived in dread. Meanwhile, his wealth grows. He now has 34 homes, 34 properties that he has acquired during his term. And this is what strong men do. They enrich themselves. Donald Trump Jr. and Matt Gaetz fawn over him. Donald Trump Jr. attended his inauguration. I'm telling you, this is Trump's role model. This is what Trump wants. He wants to be a dictator. And frankly, he is becoming one. He is doing it right now, right in front of us. I'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Republicans are trying to steal an election in the Carolinas. I'll tell you about that in North Carolina, excuse me. I'll tell you about that right after the break. And welcome back. Let's see here. Bob in Melbourne, Florida, listening on WMNF. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Ding dong. Here comes another sack.
Yeah.
The way the Trump administration is trying to negotiate with China right now. I had the fortune or misfortune of living and working in China for 5 years. So I know a little bit about it. It amazes me that, Donald Trump, the way he negotiates everything is always punching down. And the Chinese don't do that. The Chinese have a phrase, it's called maimer. It means no door. Okay? And if you don't give someone a door, a way out, in other words, Trump is saying, I'll make him a deal he can't refuse, right? Well, the Chinese say no. Now, we just lost a contract to build 130 jets.
Yeah, Boeing.
Boeing did.
Yep.
and 100 of them were 737s, and the Chinese said, "Hey, screw you, we'll build our own."
Yep.
Okay. You can't, and it amazes me that in his administration, there's somebody who doesn't understand enough about the Chinese culture that this is not how you do it. Right. This is not how you do it. And like I said, I spent my wife's Chinese. I damn sure know how to negotiate with the Chinese. And it's just, it honestly, it just blows me away that these people can be this stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my brother-in-law's wife is Chinese too. I get that. Their culture, they're a very proud people. They have a long heritage. I mean, this is a country that is, as a civilization, 10 times older than the United States is as a country.
I mean, it just blows me away, and especially the fact that they don't understand what they're doing at all.
Yeah. I'm not, Bob. I don't think they care. I am increasingly convinced that Donald Trump is trying to destroy the United States. I am too. That he's gutting our government. He's destroying our international relations. He's trying to bring our economy to its knees. He is doing absolutely everything he would do if Vladimir Putin had given him a playbook. And I think, frankly, that Vladimir Putin did give him a playbook. Now, whether Putin said do this or else, or whether Putin is just whispering in his ear saying things like, the EU was just created to screw America. Doesn't that upset you, Donald? Whether he's being played or whether he is, enthusiastic, I don't know. But go ahead.
No, I agree with everything that you say. That I'm out of words.
I think he hates our country. Ahead. I think he sat in that courtroom in New York City. I mean, his DOJ is now doing a criminal investigation of Pam.
Just a megalomaniac, just a guy that, there can be no other explanation for it except he just wants power for the sake of having power.
And the wealth that is associated with it. And the immunity and impunity that is associated with it. This is a guy, this is a very little man, mentally, morally, emotionally, who wants to be a very big man. Bob, thank you. Spot on. I'm with you. 22 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day. And the GOP trying to steal an election in North Carolina right after this. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. Back in 2010, when Viktor Orban took over the Fidesz party in Hungary, that party was sort of like the Republican Party. It was just a conventional conservative European political party. And he has turned it into a neo-fascist powerhouse. He pushed through he altered the nation's constitution to push through what we would call gerrymandering and voter suppression so that his party will always win. He campaigned on building a wall. Build a wall was literally one of his campaign slogans, and he did build a wall across the southern border of Hungary to keep out Syrian refugees who were fleeing the violence when Russia was bombing that country. His other two campaign slogans were, and I quote, "Restore Christian purity and make Hungary great again." Seriously, back in 2010, 6 years before Trump. There's an amazing backstory about how Viktor Orban is being cloned, essentially, in the GOP. You can find the article over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
They built a machine fueled by fear. A whisper grows and it's all you hear. From every screen it feeds the fire, twisting truth to fuel desire. A mother's cry, a worker's loss, a calculated line they'll toss. They turn your pain into their gold, selling grievance never gets old. The grievance machine, it's always on, spinning stories dusk till dawn. Fear and lies are its gasoline. Bow to the beast, the grievance machine.
Yeah, it's Fox so-called news, and they have basically the entire right-wing ecosphere. By the way, last November, North Carolina held an election for the state Supreme Court, and Allison Riggs, the Democrat, won. And her opponent, Jefferson Griffin, a MAGA Republican, lost. There was a 734-vote victory. Well, Griffin went scorched earth. He tried to disenfranchise 60,000 4 blue counties. He specifically went to 4 blue counties and said, exclude the voters in these 4 counties. Well, the courts didn't go along with that. So then he said, okay, here's the problem. The mail-in votes from the military overseas and people who are permanent residents overseas, which, by the way, tend to go Democratic. The military votes tend to go Republican, but they're the smaller number. The people who are permanent residents of other countries, they tend to go Democratic. And so he says, let's not count those. And so the court says, okay, we'll split the baby. I'll give those people 30 days to come to North Carolina and prove that they are who they are and, quote, cure their ballots. Now, I'm not sure if they have to physically show up or if they have to do something or just submit paperwork. But here you've got, thousands of votes, 5,000 or 6,000 votes that skew heavily Democratic. Keep in mind, this is an election the Democrat won by 700 votes. Now it's being tossed to a federal court, and hopefully that will stop this. But this is the new template for Republicans. Elections don't matter. Any loophole, anything you can do to defeat your loss in an election, you do.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
27 minutes past the hour. What's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich by me. I wrote this book. This is from the introduction, the title, How a Single-Payer Healthcare Systems Help Stop COVID-19. Healthcare systems can be national security systems. Just ask anyone from Taiwan. From January 20th, 2020, on January 20, 2020, the United States recorded its first known case of COVID-19 infection. The following day, Taiwan got their first one, too. By the end of April, over 1 million Americans were infected with the virus. But Taiwan had recorded only 388 infections, and their last case of local transmission was on April 12th. A few had arrived on aircraft from other countries. All were contained by quarantine. As of this writing in September 2020, there hadn't been a single new case or a single death in Taiwan since April. The economy never shut down and, as of this writing, was projected to have grown nearly 2% in 2020. Business, restaurants, theaters, and sports events were all open. Life was back to normal, albeit a mask-wearing normal. And it was made possible by their national single-payer healthcare system and their citizens' willingness to do their bit for the collective good. Back in the 1980s, Taiwan was on the edge of moving toward a democracy after a military coup in the 1960s. And about 40% of Taiwanese families did not have health insurance. If somebody in a family got sick, the cost of care often wiped out that family, and demands for reform were loud across the nation. Yue Reinhardt was a German-born healthcare economist married to a Taiwanese woman, and he attended a conference on healthcare in Taipei in 1989. His presentation impressed representatives of the government in attendance, and while he was still in town for the conference, they asked him for his best suggestion for a national healthcare system. He and his wife went back to their hotel and discussed the issue in depth, finally deciding that a single-payer national system would be the most cost-effective, efficient, and comprehensive program possible. He shared his thoughts with the government representatives, and the next day he left Taiwan to go back to Princeton,
where he was an economic professor. 6 months later, though, a representative of Taiwan's government called him to say that they were going to take up his suggestion and asked him to help craft their healthcare program. He enthusiastically agreed, and by 1995, Taiwan had instituted one of the world's best single-payer healthcare systems. Today, everybody in Taiwan is fully covered for doctor and hospital services. Everybody has a driver's license-like healthcare card, which accesses their entire medical history. They can book a doctor's appointment on any computer terminal in the country, and the entire cost of the system is a bit more than 6% of Taiwan's GDP. For comparison, in the United States, healthcare consumes 24% of our GDP. Because there is no insurance company intermediaries sucking profits off the system in Taiwan. When COVID-19 hit, Taiwan chose not to use the blunt force technique of shutting down their economy and locking people in. Instead, they took on the coronavirus with an aggressive nationwide test and contact trace program tied into the National Health Service database. Every infected person was identified and put into a comfortable quarantine, and every person he or she had come into contact with, even very marginal contacts, were also tested and their contacts traced. By April, just a bit more than 2 months after the first case surfaced, the country had the coronavirus isolated and completely under control. By quarantining inbound visitors to the nation island of 23 million, they were able, as of this writing, to keep it that way. Maintaining public health is one of the most important functions of any nation's healthcare system. Because America's is so fragmented, it's inconceivable that our nation could respond to an epidemic, a pandemic, or another public health disaster with the speed and elegance of Taiwan or any of the world's other nations with single-payer Medicare for all types of systems. It's like Stockholm Syndrome, a friend who's a psychotherapist said, describing the way that Americans have clung for more than 5 generations to a for-profit health insurance system, while the rest of the world figured out how to provide health care to all their citizens at a much lower price. People know it and have become familiar with it, she added. They just can't imagine anything else. It's probably the largest con job ever perpetrated on the American people, one that has cost trillions of dollars and millions of lives. It's been going on since the 1940s. If it were a scientific experiment, it would have been shut down by the ethics review panels generations ago. This experiment in providing health care via a for-profit insurance system has led to the deaths of more Americans than we lost in World War II. Every year, over 500,000 Americans go bankrupt, often losing everything they've worked their entire lives for because somebody in their family got sick. That's 500,000 families a year, every year, for the past few decades. And the coronavirus, of course, has only made things worse. Perhaps most galling, this massive ripoff is costing our entire nation and each of us individually a fortune. Insurance premiums right now make up 22% of all taxable payroll, well above what the cost of Medicare for all would be at around 14% when first put into place, dropping down to around 10% within a few years as previously uninsured people get their health needs up to date. As the health insurance, drug, and hospital parasites push their suckers deeper and deeper into our body politic, spending on health care by Americans went up 25% between 2000 and 2014. The book, The Hidden History of American Health Care by Thom Hartmann. Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. So back in 1933, when Franklin Roosevelt became president, we were in the depths of the Great Depression. He raised the top income tax rate on billionaires from 25% to 90%. The ultra-rich were screaming. And here's what he had to say.
A number of my friends who belong in the very high upper bracket have suggested to me on several occasions of late that if I am re-elected president, they will have to move to some other nation because of high taxes here. Now, I will miss them very much.
He just took it right to them, right? Now, what came out of that was the world's largest and fastest growing and first major middle class. We can do this again. We just have to raise taxes on rich people. It's pretty straightforward. There's a whole article about it over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Donald Trump with a golden dream wants to rule by any scheme. Talks of Greenland, talks of land, wants to take it with his hand. Power, wealth, his empire grows. Where it ends, nobody knows. Imperial dreams reach so wide, chasing power fueled by pride. From Pope to Putin, he takes his cues, a fantasy he won't refuse.
36 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Geeky science for you. This is just absolutely amazing. Last weekend, Sunday morning, Louise and I were out in Forest Park climbing the Wild Cherry Trail. If you've ever been there and you know what I'm talking about, you know what it is. It's this path that just kind of goes straight up the side of a mountain. And, we on our Apple Watches, we monitor our heartbeat rates. 101, 110, 115, 130, 100. But it's great. This is 5,200 acres of forest and 80 miles of trails. It's the largest urban park in the world, the largest park inside a city. And it's wild. It's just, total wild area. And so anyhow, we were walking and Louise was like, I've heard that being out in the nature is good for you. In fact, she did a song about it, and Go Find Your Mountain. And we've done Geeky Sciences on it. And there's all these studies that show that if you live in nature, you visit nature regularly, if you see the ducks and the geese, you visit the forest, those kind of things, it actually improves mental health. People who have hospital rooms where they can look out the window and see green things heal faster. I mean, there's all kinds of science on this, right? So anyhow, she was wondering out loud, because we do this every weekend, could these walks in the woods actually be helping our health? And for that matter, could it be helping our immune systems? Dealing with things like asthma or arthritis. So when we got home from the walk, I sat down with a couple of search engines and dug into it. And this is what I learned. First of all, David Strachan proposed in 1989 what he called the hygiene hypothesis, which argues that the reason that people end up with asthma and plaque psoriasis and all these other autoimmune disorders where the immune system is just constantly attacking the body or overreacting to things is because as children, they were not sufficiently exposed to germs, to bad germs, but in particular good germs. And that their house was too clean, that they weren't in nature enough. And it recalibrates your immune system. Now, the hygiene hypothesis is kind of out. It's been replaced by what's called the old friends hypothesis, which is that there is this collection of microbes, bacteria, fungi, that we co-evolved with over millions of years, and that we have separated ourselves from because they live in the soil in the forest, by and large, and in trees and things. And they are our old friends. So anyhow, there's this amazing 2015 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine, and they compared the immune profiles of Amish children who grow up in farms and forest with regular exposure to soil with genetically identical Hutterite children who live on industrial farms with limited exposure to animals and soil. And despite their genetic similarities, these are both, German ancestry, the Amish children had dramatically lower levels of asthma and allergies. Then there's this fascinating body of evidence that comes from studies on what's called Shinrin-yoku, which is the Japanese phrase for forest bathing. Now, you don't have to take off your clothes for this. You go into the forest, just normally, like Louise and I go on our hikes every Saturday and Sunday. It's a Japanese practice of immersing oneself in a forest environment. So this is a major study done at the Nippon Medical School in Tokyo. They took a group of middle-aged Tokyo businessmen into the forest for 3 days. And after 3 days of just kind of camping out, what they found was that the blood test revealed significant increases in natural killer cells, the immune cells that played a vital role in fighting infection and fighting off cancer. But most remarkably, they showed decreased levels of inflammatory cytokines, the things that drive the excessive inflammatory responses in conditions like asthma. And most surprisingly, these beneficial immune changes that occurred just from 3 days in the forest lasted more than 30 days. Their entire immune systems downregulated their response, their kind of asthma kind of response, and upregulated their anti-cancer response. There was another study published in 2020 in Science Advances. This was out of Finland, and what they did was they modified daycare playgrounds. Instead of having sand, they brought in forest dirt, literally from the forest, soil, native plants, all the microbiota that they contain. And after 28 days, they measured the blood of the children who were playing in these naturalized playgrounds. They had an increased diversity in their skin and gut microbiomes, but most importantly, their regulatory T cells. These are the specialized immune cells that drive allergic reactions, that drive asthma, that drive allergies, that dampen excessive immune responses. There was an increase in the regulatory T cells. In other words, their asthma kind of responses went way, way down. Another fascinating aspect of forest exposure is something called phytoncides. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, Phytoncides. These are the natural oils that are released by trees and plants in the forest as a defense against insects. And these chemicals, the phytocyanide exposure, reduces levels of stress hormones in humans. It decreases the sympathetic nervous system activity. This is the fight and flight response. And it enhances the parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest functions. Lab studies have gone even farther, demonstrating that some of these phytocyanides have direct anti-inflammatory processes or properties. Alpha-pinene, for example, which is one of the compounds that pine trees release into the air, has been shown to reduce inflammatory markers in lung tissue, particularly in people with asthma. A 2019 study that was published in Environmental Health Perspectives found that adults living near areas with greater biodiversity have lower rates of asthma exacerbations and lower rates of hospital visits associated with asthma compared to those living near less diverse green spaces. So get out in the forest, huh? We spend a couple hours every weekend in the forest, and where we live, we're kind of surrounded by trees, but it's not like in the forest. I mean, it's all kind of manicured, but yeah, this is amazing. I mean, just amazing research. All right, what's on your mind today? Lori in Ocala, Florida. Hey, Lori, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Everybody is talking about Trump wanting to be a dictator and emulating this guy and other dictators. I think that Trump played as a millionaire and pretended to fire people, but he was never a millionaire and he was never good at it. I think that Trump has always been a really good thug, and he will continue to always be a mafioso thug. He's nothing but a thug. And I think that a lot of the people that have succumbed to that I think all along the Republicans have always wanted to own the government and have everything privatized. And I think Trump has always wanted to be able to hold everybody hostage with one of his schemes or another and suck our money, out of our country, like our contributions for Social Security. That's our money. I don't think any one of them collectively have ever put as much Social Security in as the average regular Joe that's worked their whole lives, but that's our money. They're thugs, and they will continue to be thugs. About the Republicans that aren't, I think they're like, you look at Marco Rubio in one of those meetings, or you look at Chuck Grassley at a town hall, they look like they're being taken hostage. They look like they were told to do this or else. They're just doing. I think that Republicans are kind of like Catholic. Well, geez, I'm a Protestant, or kind of like a black person. Oh, geez, I'm Indian. Everybody is a little different and can be different, but they're us. We are them. Okay, it's what was that other movement? It's our turn, or no, me too. Well, I say for all of us, nobody wants this prison done in this concentration camp done in our name. Nobody, and we need to collectively hug these Republicans that are good people. I'm not talking about the Southern Republicans that are jerks and just want to,
Do you really think most of them are good people, Lori? I think that I think the Republican Party has self-selected for psychopaths.
I think that some of them still are, because I can look at the horrified looks on their faces.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the ones that elected Republicans are, and I think a lot of them in there are.
Yeah.
We need to help them get out.
Well, I hope you're right, Lori. I hope you're right, because the only people right now who can truly stop Donald Trump are the Republicans. And if they were to stand up in the House and Senate, we could put an end to this whole thing right now. Lori, thank you. 45 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. Mary in Aurora, Colorado. Hey, Mary, what's on your mind today?
Hi, good morning. I want to share some really important information about protests, and I want to tell you a little story about what we've been doing. Yes, all 50 states, hands-off protests and more. How you find them is something one of your callers called about, and it's called THEBL.org. The BLOP.
Oh, that's right.
.org.
That's right. The BLOP.
I had forgotten about that. And there are protests every day. And I looked up Oregon in specific, and you have a ton going on.
Mm-hmm.
If any of your people go look this up, please repost it on all your social media, because I'm seeing people and talking to people who have no idea this weekend is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And we need bigger numbers. Our assignment is to bring 5 friends. And I want to be encouraging. I want to ask people, if you don't have something, make your own. A small rural town I visit a lot, they started with 5 people, and now there are 40 people every single week.
Mm-hmm.
I carry my signs in my truck. My friend and I go to different towns and stand on corners just to hopefully, with our signs, to empower people and let them know they aren't alone, and hopefully inspire people. You know, we're Americans, and now is our time.
Yeah. So I totally get it. I just went to the website, and you're right. Although it looks like the nationwide hands-off thing has kind of devolved into a bunch of like local things. I'm fascinated by this, because there was a couple of days there where they were promoting it last week, and now those, over on Indivisible and 5051, and they both appear to have changed or gone away. Maybe they're. Go ahead.
I think Mobilize Us is who's behind Hands Off. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I thought I saw a Hands Off one in.
Yeah, but I'd have to dig a little deeper. But Marion, thank you for reminding me about the BLOP, THEBLOP. You're right, the big list of protests.
So meet me on the streets, y'all. We got to be there. And thank you so much for your show, Tom. I appreciate you.
You're welcome, Mary.
And your staff.
Thank you for your kind words. Wynn in Emden, Maine. Hey, Wynn, what's up?
Emden, Maine. Yes. Well, I'm calling about the baffled people who can't quite figure out why Trump is doing the things Trump's doing. And I was quite pleased last Friday, I think it was, for the first time, I heard you come out and say that Trump hates America.
Yeah, I think he's acting on behalf of Vladimir Putin, frankly.
Right. Well, I'm the fellow that called probably 2 weeks ago, whose uncle was one of his bankruptcy judges, warned me about Trump and everything. And a couple of decades ago, I worked for a government agency, which I'm not going to say what that is right now, what that was. but I made quite a bit of friends, quite a few friends there, all of whom have to have. Is this it for me?
Yeah.
Am I done?
Hey, you got 10 seconds. Make your point, Win.
I can't do it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thanks for the call, though. Pro tip, always make your big point first and then add the details afterwards. It's the way to do it on the radio. It's 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be right back. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. You know, we've all gotten so used to living in a country where people are trying to crowdfund, like, cancer research for children. St. Jude's is a wonderful charity, but we're the only developed country in the world that needs, you know, where you have to go to people and beg for money in order to treat children with cancer. Or Shriners, I mean, another great charity, but shouldn't we all be funding children who are born with birth defects and problems like that? We're probably the only country in the world where you can sell your life insurance policy because Social Security doesn't cover your retirement. I mean, it's probably not happening anywhere else in the world. Or reverse mortgage your home because you can't afford it. I mean, this is crazy that we are living in a country where No Kid Hungry, a charity. You can read all about it. There's a whole op-ed I wrote about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled America's Sickest Reality Show, Crowdfunding Cancer Care While Billionaires Hoard Billions. Check it out.
Trump in the wings with the lights going black. Script in his fist, no plan to come back. The White House a set, the flag just a prop. Truth takes a bullet, the cameras don't stop. He's never been real, but the danger is true. He's gambling with lives for a headline or two. The audience cheers as the nation breaks down. He laughs at the fire as he melts off the crown.
52 minutes past the hour. Yeah, the show must go on. Welcome back. Roger in Seattle. Hey, Roger, what's on your mind today?
I'm early in Hilo, practicing my Eagle Scout, walking around Kilauea, but with your commentary earlier today, I think I need to hike around Mount St. Helens because they may have a blow up here that they don't expect like Mount St. Helens. Anyway, I went on your website since I've been out of touch for a week, and I missed your show last week, and I looked for your rant on the Liberals Party, and I didn't see anything except 4 years old or something. So if there's a more recent one, can you point me to it? Because I sorely need it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Roger.
The people that were on the extreme of the 2025 report that we're seeing now are the liberalists. And it shows where Pramila and Elon have a common. If you go into Wikipedia, look under classic liberalism, and Pramila, of course, emphasizes the social justice side, and Musk conveniently forgets that side of
classic
individualism.
liberalism is what we call conservatism here in the United States now. But Roger, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. John in Navarre, Florida. Am I saying that right? Navar? What's up, John?
Yeah, that's correct. Tom, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just fine. What's up?
Thanks very much for having me on the program today. I follow you on Twitter on the Gulf Coast Guys as a handle. We try to retweet your Substack article every day. It's kind of required reading. I wanted to give you a reminder that this coming Sunday, April the 20th, will be the 15th anniversary of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Everybody here that lives on the Gulf Coast kind of remembers where they were when it happened. It was 15 years ago. I was wondering if you might consider a Substack article on, maybe the title could be Trump Musk gutting the EPA in new environmental relaxations, inviting a new Deepwater Horizon catastrophe. Because if you know the history of that, it was actually... it was kind of invited by the work that Dick Cheney did on something you might remember called was the Energy Task Force.
Yep.
He had a group of the energy executives around his office, and they had a whole list of regulations. And one of the invitees, one of the participants, was, of course, British Petroleum that operated the Deepwater Horizon well. And one of the regulations that came out of that meeting was a relaxation of standards of safety measures.
Right, on the blow-up preventers.
Like the blow-up preventer, that's exactly right. It was a $500,000, it was called an acoustical coupler that attached to the bottom of the well. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that you have to take the well offline in order to attach and maintain the blow-up preventer, the acoustical coupler. And so Bush, as an executive order, made that addition to the blow-up preventer optional, no longer mandatory.
Right.
And so what happened was that when that blow-up preventer was not part of the Deepwater Horizon spill at the time that it exploded. And so it cost like billions of dollars. 15 years later, there are still effects of the oil spill here on the Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
So what Trump is doing in gutting the EPA is inviting another Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So
or worse.
Might consider an article on it.
Yeah, or worse. Yeah, no, I've been putting together slowly the research for a piece on Trump's environmental record, and that's a good suggestion. John, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Good to hear from you. Bill in Princeton, Minnesota. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind?
I'll tell you, sitting in the queue, it really changes what your original question is going to be. I'm sure I'm not alone on that.
It's quite all right, but get right to it, Bill. We just have a minute.
Okay. The reason Trump hates this country, I read your little op-ed in Raw's story, because he went bankrupt on everything. And, he's not going to blame himself. He's going to have to blame Americans. And then when the banks wouldn't lend him any money because he was such a financial risk, then he went to, Russia to get the money, and he got Ivana. And it's just, he hates this country, and he wants to destroy it because it destroyed him so many times.
Or embarrassed him, I would say. I think I think he just marinated in hatred during that trial, when Letitia James went after him in New York.
But he didn't like this country because of all his failures, and it couldn't have been him.
I agree.
And
what's
the Supreme Court's oath? Why aren't they? I can't remember what the oath they take is.
I think it's the standard oath to protect the Constitution, but I don't know, Bill. That's a good question. I'd have to look it up. Bill, thanks for the call. We'll be back on the other side of the break. Is the Supreme Court about to make a decision on whether Trump can fire the Fed chair? Stick around. We'll be right back with that and your calls.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Hidden History of American Healthcare: Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich by by me. I wrote this book. This is from the introduction, the title, How a Single-Payer Healthcare Systems Helps Stop COVID-19. Healthcare systems can be national security systems. Just ask anyone from Taiwan. From January 20th, 2020, the United States, or on January 20, 2020, the United States recorded its first known case of COVID-19 infection. The following day, Taiwan got their first one too. By the end of April, over 1 million Americans were infected with the virus. But Taiwan had recorded only 388 infections, and their last case of local transmission was on April 12th. A few had arrived on aircraft from other countries. All were contained by quarantine. As of this writing in September 2020, there hadn't been a single new case or a single death in Taiwan since April. The economy never shut down, and as of this writing, was projected to have grown nearly 2% in 2020. Business, restaurants, theaters, and sports events were all open. Life was back to normal, albeit a mask-wearing normal. And it was made possible by their national single-payer healthcare system and their citizens' willingness to do their bit for the collective good. Back in the 1980s, Taiwan was on the edge of moving toward a democracy after a military coup in the 1960s. And about 40% of Taiwanese families did not have health insurance. If somebody in a family got sick, the cost of care often wiped out that family, and demands for reform were loud across the nation. Yue Reinhardt was a German-born healthcare economist married to a Taiwanese woman, and he attended a conference on healthcare in Taipei in 1989. His presentation impressed representatives of the government in attendance, and while he was still in town for the conference, they asked him for his best suggestion for a national healthcare system. He and his wife went back to their hotel and discussed the issue in depth, finally deciding that a single-payer national system would be the most cost-effective, efficient, and comprehensive program possible. He shared his thoughts with the government representatives, and the next day he left Taiwan to go back to Princeton, where he was an economic professor. 6 months later, though, a representative of Taiwan's government called him to say that they were going to take up his suggestion and asked him to help craft their healthcare program. He enthusiastically agreed, and by 1995, Taiwan had instituted one of the world's best single-payer healthcare systems. Today, everybody in Taiwan is fully covered for doctor and hospital services. Everybody has a driver's license-like healthcare card, which accesses their entire medical history. They can book a doctor's appointment on any computer terminal in the country, and the entire cost of the system is a bit more than 6% of Taiwan's GDP. For comparison, in the United States, healthcare consumes 24% of our GDP, because there is no insurance company intermediaries sucking profits off the system in Taiwan. When COVID-19 hit, Taiwan chose not to use the blunt force technique of shutting down their economy and locking people in. Instead, they took on the aggressive nationwide test and contact trace program tied into the National Health Service database. Every infected person was identified and put into a comfortable quarantine, and every person he or she had come into contact with, even very marginal contacts, were also tested and their contacts traced. By April, just a bit more than 2 months after the first case surfaced, the country had the coronavirus isolated and completely under control. By quarantining inbound visitors to the nation island of 23 million, they were able, as of this writing, to keep it that way. Maintaining public health is one of the most important functions of any nation's healthcare system. Because America's is so fragmented, it's inconceivable that our nation could respond to an epidemic, a pandemic, or another public health disaster with the speed and elegance of Taiwan or any of the world's other nations with single-payer Medicare for all types of systems. It's like Stockholm Syndrome, a friend who's a psychotherapist said, describing the way that Americans have clung for more than 5 generations to a for-profit health insurance system, while the rest of the world figured out how to provide health care to all their citizens at a much lower price. People know it and have become familiar with it, she added. They just can't imagine anything else. It's probably the largest con job ever perpetrated on the American people, one that has cost trillions of dollars and millions of lives. It's been going on since the 1940s. If it were a scientific experiment, it would have been shut down by the ethics review panels generations ago. This experiment in providing health care via a for-profit insurance system has led to the deaths of more Americans than we lost in World War II. Every year, over 500,000 Americans go bankrupt, often losing everything they've worked their entire lives for because somebody in their family got sick. That's a
500,000 families a year, every year, for the past few decades. And the coronavirus, of course, has only made things worse. Perhaps most galling, this massive ripoff is costing our entire nation and each of us individually a fortune. Insurance premiums right now make up 22% of all taxable payroll, well above what the cost of Medicare for all would be at around 14% when first put into place, dropping down to around 10% within a few years as previously uninsured people get their health needs up to date. As the health insurance, drug, and hospital parasites push their suckers deeper and deeper into our body politic, spending on health care by Americans went up 25% between 2000 and 2014. The book, The Hidden History of American Health Care by Thom Hartmann.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. The Supreme Court just picked up a debate, a case that could lead to basically the destruction of the U.S. dollar and the U.S. dominance of the world currencies. It actually has nothing to do with the Fed, on its surface. But frankly, I think this could have everything to do with the independence of the Fed, whether Donald Trump can fire Jerome Powell, basically, which he wants to do, but he doesn't have the legal right to do. This all goes back to 1935. In 1935, Franklin Roosevelt wanted to fire a member of the Federal Trade Commission who he felt was sabotaging his efforts. The guy was a Republican. He was, whatever. And the problem is that the Federal Trade Commission people are appointed in a very, very similar fashion to the chairman of the Fed and the members of the Board of Governors. And the law says that those people can only be fired for cause. Both the FTC and so now here comes this lawsuit about the FTC. This is called the Humphreys Executor. In 1935, Franklin Roosevelt tried to fire this guy, Humphreys Executor, and lost. So the Supreme Court ruled in 1935, no, you cannot fire these people because the law says you can only fire them for cause. You can't fire them because you don't like what they're doing. They have to have committed a crime or refused to show up for work. I mean, you have to have a legitimate reason to fire somebody rather than just you don't like what they're doing or you disagree with what they're doing. And that applied to the Federal Trade Commission. It applied to the Federal Reserve Bank. It applied to multiple other agencies as well. But here we come now. Trump fired a member of the National Labor Relations Board. Again, one of these agencies where you have presidential appointments, and once they're in, they're not supposed to be able to be fired unless there is cause. And yet Trump fired a Democratic member of the National Labor Relations Board and a Democratic member of the Merit Systems Protection Board, which is, associated with that. And both of these people who were fired sued and said this is illegal. This is a violation of the Humphreys Executive Order 1935 case where the Supreme Court said, no, the president can't sue the people in positions like us. And the court invited both sides to submit their briefs by the end of the day yesterday. So we don't know yet whether the court is going to grant cert on this, although they have taken this first step of saying, we will read your briefs, which is a big first step. And if they grant cert, it means that they're going to have an actual court case. There's going to be an actual hearing before all 9 justices, and the court will rule on this. And if they rule in Trump's favor, if they say, yes, Donald, you are the king of the executive branch, you can do whatever you damn well please, you can fire these people, then Trump will have the authority under that ruling, unless they specifically exempt the Fed, which is extremely unlikely. Trump will have the power, the authority to fire Jerome Powell, whose term would otherwise, I believe, expire next year. But Trump wants to get rid of him because he wants interest rates to come down because he knows that that'll goose the market. That'll, lift the market, although it'll also lift inflation, which might hurt the market. I mean, who knows? It's pretty hard, when you start doing things that are just not rational, they're not the way things have always been done, they're just, very, very problematic, then it's really hard to predict what the outcome will be. But I just want to put that on your radar screen. This could be a very, very big case in what seems to be this little technical thing about the Department of Labor. So keep an eye on it. Meanwhile, Doge is claiming that they have discovered all kinds of examples of unemployment fraud. Yeah, now, unemployment insurance was put into place in 1934 or 35. I think it was 35 by Franklin Roosevelt. It was part of the New Deal. And Republicans have hated unemployment insurance ever since then. And the main reason why is because unemployment insurance is paid for by employers. My little company that owns this radio program, this radio TV program, every month we have to pay on every single one of our employees, we have to pay into an unemployment insurance fund so that if one of our employees loses their job and qualifies for unemployment insurance here in the state of Oregon, they can claim against that pool of money that we have accumulated over the 22, 23 years we've been doing the show. It's frankly, I don't think it's ever happened to us. Maybe it might have happened once. Yeah, I think it did happen once with an employee who got real sick. But basically, the idea here is that Republicans don't think employers should have to ever pay for anything. Right? It's like, they shouldn't have to pay taxes. They shouldn't have to pay into unemployment. And by the way, unemployment funds help the little people, right? They help the average Joe. They help, they help people who are employed, not the employers. And so Republicans just don't like the little people. They don't like working people. They like their billionaires. They like their bankers. Look at George W. Bush bailing out the banksters in 2008. So that with so many trillions of dollars that the banksters themselves who had crashed our economy were giving themselves $100 million, billion-dollar bonuses with this government money. The George Bush just kind of lathered all over them. And what's really weird is over on Twitter, you'll find right-wing trolls claiming that it was Obama who bailed out the banks. No, it was Bush. It was at the end of 2008. But anyway, so here's Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency. The Guardian's writing about this, Michael Sanato. In one case, claiming someone who had their birthday listed as the year 2154, and Musk says they claim 41,000, or somebody on X claims they got $41,000, and these claims have just swept across right-wing media. Oh my God, there's all kinds of unemployment fraud. And Fox News is on it, Breitbart is on it, and they're all saying, Doge found it, look at this, here's one, here's another one. It's over $1 billion in unemployment fraud. And sure enough, there was over $1 billion in unemployment fraud, $1.1 billion to be specific. But it was unemployment fraud that was found by the Biden administration, that was prosecuted by the Biden administration. Over 2,000 people have been convicted of unemployment fraud by the Biden administration. And now you've got Doge running around going, oh yeah, we found these people. Look at this, look at this, look at this. In fact, Biden gave the states $2 billion, distributed across 50 states, to conduct their own unemployment insurance fraud investigations. And that's where they found the $1.1 billion in unemployment fraud. So, once again, Doge just BSing us. Why? Well, because they can. I mean, it's just real simple, because they can. All right, what's on your mind today? We've got a lot going on. David in North Miami Beach, Florida. Hey, David, what's up?
Greetings, program. So this is the Tom.
Indeed.
Yes, sir. Right. So the bad news is when I was at City Hall in my red shirt, as in the red shirts from Star Trek and the related book, I was not there as mayor or ex-mayor, despite my efforts. I try to tell them all the harsh truths they don't like to hear. The good news is I'm at least starting the process of running for governor as a Democrat. Since everyone loves tariffs, I call my program Tariff by Plate. You cross the border in a car without forward plates, you get dinged $1,000.
You know, we used to have interstate tariffs in the United States.
See?
Back in the early days of the Republic, there were interstate tariffs, and they got, I don't recall when or how or why they got struck down, but they got struck down as being unconstitutional.
Well, I'll settle for the controversy. I mean, I hear that having external revenue service is a smart idea, according to the stable genius. But the ugly part is I think I've come up with a solution to rescue those, the kidnapping victims in El Salvador. Mm-hmm. It's time for Ben Affleck to go full circle. Remember his movie Argo? The Americans rescued under the guise of being Canadians in a movie. Mm-hmm. I think Ben Affleck. You're talking about the Iranian hostages. Right. The one.
Bonnie Sauter, President Bonnie Sauter wrote an op-ed for the objecting to that movie, Argo. Yeah, I remember it well.
Okay. Yeah, I know it has its flaws, but at least the events were real. So I say that he pulls a real life Argo, claiming that he's working on, say, The Accountant 3, about an autistic accountant with the combat skills, and he needs the father of the nonverbal autistic as a special advisor, and he would make the dictator there a producer of the movie, sort of like Mnuchin in the Wonder Woman movies.
You need to be writing novels, David, or screenplays. David, thanks for the call. You definitely should be writing novels or screenplays. 17 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. I'll be right back with your calls. Welcome back. Richard in Highland Park, California. Hey, Richard, what's up?
Oh, man, something so important to me that Harvard is fighting back against Trump, the king.
Isn't that a big deal? That's amazing. They're sitting on like something like a $40 or $50 billion endowment, so they can afford it. Yeah. But God bless them.
And we need to get all these campus protesters to add this to their anti-war stuff to support all these campuses. Man, it's something. But anyhow, the history of it is our First Amendment. I found out on that passoir.com thing that in 1743, a 20-year-old theology graduate student stood up in front of his class, and at that time it was such a big deal that England would send over magistrates to be part of the celebration or, the graduation thing. And this guy stood up, 1743. You get your head lopped off for what he says here. He said, whether it be lawful to resist the supreme magistrate, the king, if the Commonwealth cannot otherwise be preserved. Can you believe that? He said that at Harvard. And this
30 years before the American Revolution. Yeah.
And before the First Amendment. That's the free speech of the First Amendment.
Well,
it's the year Thomas Jefferson was born. So this goes back a long way, and Harvard needs to be totally supported with what they're doing.
I agree.
And to put this out, they started the First Amendment. Good for them.
Yeah, I'm with you, Richard. And, we're seeing now Harvard is fighting back. You've got several law firms that are fighting back. Meanwhile, you've got other universities and other law firms that are just rolling over for Trump. I have a feeling, though, that this is going to come to an end, that people are figuring out that you can't negotiate with Trump. He will just take and take and take. Richard, thank you. Daniel in Santa Monica. Hey, Daniel, what's up?
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call, Tom.
Sure.
Just calling, share my story. My beautiful 91-year-old mom passed away on April 2nd of this year, 2025.
Sorry.
Thank you. And no less than 10 days later, I got an email from one of the telephone company that took money out of her account automatically, and it said it was not able to debit the amount. So I went online, checked on her account, and there was a $18,600 debit being taken out of my mom's account. Unfortunately, online it didn't tell you, so I had to go into the local branch of her bank, and they opened it up, and just out of complete surprise, there was the Social Security Administration trying to debit out $18,600
Were
from
they
my
saying
mom's
that they had
account.
overpaid her?
They wouldn't say. I called into the Social Security line, and they said they could not tell me, but I would have to make an appointment to the local office to find out exactly why.
Wild.
My mom was living on, her Social Security and a VA benefit for the past 10 years or so, and she basically. You were speaking of Doge earlier, and I can only assume that this is
They
part of their
were
criteria.
recovering overpayments at the rate of 10% per year, and Trump changed that to 100% immediate, and so that probably your mother got hit by that. And my guess is that they had been recovering it at a 10% rate prior to that. Daniel, thanks for the story. I got to run. Thank you. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So what do we call the really, really mind-bogglingly rich? At the founding of the Republic, they were referred to as speculators or moneyed interest or aristocrats. In the years leading up to the Civil War, we called them the cotton lords and the plantation aristocracy. In the late 19th century, they were the robber barons. In the 1930s, FDR called them the economic royalists. But since the Reagan Revolution, we've just called them billionaires. And now, some of them want to call themselves tech bros. Like, that's kind of a good thing, like tech is positive and bros, like Mark Zuckerberg saying we need more masculine energy in American business culture. So we need a new phrase. I would like to suggest the morbidly rich. Morbidly suggests unhealthy. And the vast riches that some of these people have is unhealthy to our democracy, particularly since 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court said that morbidly rich people can buy politicians. And it's unhealthy for them, too. So morbidly rich. There's an op-ed over at HartmannReport.com all about it. Check it out.
They worked their lives, they paid their dues. Now billionaires are spreading news that Social Security's gotta go. But we see through that dog and pony show. Behind closed doors, the votes are cast by men who serve the ultra class. They won't face us in the light of day, but we're here and we've got something to say. Hands off our Social Security. This belongs to you and me. We paid in, we earned that right. We won't back down, we're gonna fight. Hands off our Social Security. No dog chainsaws on our tree. We won't let the system crash and burn. It's ours and now it's our turn.
23 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Tim in Shelby Township, Michigan. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How you doing today?
Good. What's up?
Okay, just a couple things. One, I went to an Indivisible meeting. They're starting a chapter in Macomb, Ruby Red Macomb.
Congratulations.
And they said that there was like 14, their first meeting, then they had almost 2 dozen. Over 80, between 80 and 100 people showed up this past Monday.
Oh, that's marvelous.
Yes. And they're just in the organizational phase, and we're going to go out, spread, and grow. One other thing, why doesn't a congressman or woman preferably like Senator Warnock, who is an ordained minister. Why doesn't he just go up to Mike Johnson and tell him he's going to hell?
Well, there was a member of Congress, a Democratic member of Congress, who rebuked Mike Johnson in the name of Jesus. He said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," last week. I don't recall who it was, but it was pretty weird.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was a Democrat. Had to be.
Reminding Johnson that for all his do-gooding, he's killing people.
Yeah.
And he's killing the nation.
And so is Musk. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Tim, thank you.
I don't know how religious Musk is.
No, he's not. He's not at all, as far as I can tell. I think the only religion he believes in is spreading his sperm as far and wide as possible, with his little harem that the Wall Street Journal is writing about today. Tim, thanks for the call. Good stuff. Rocco in Chicago. Hey, Rocco, what's up?
Thanks for taking my call. Tom, I don't know, I don't hear all the media out there, but I would like to impress upon people that around this Arrego Garcia matter, it is kidnapping.
It is.
It is by statute, and it is an impeachable offense. And I'm trying to get the word out to people that this is a moment to impeach Trump.
I agree. It's also a moment to prosecute the people who kidnapped him.
Correct.
The governor, the Attorney General of Maryland should be all over this.
And the people in that room with the El Salvadoran president, they are all participants in the process of kidnapping.
Oh, they're all Neville Chamberlains. I mean, they were sitting around giggling and sucking up to a guy who calls himself a dictator. He proudly proclaims he's a dictator.
They are accomplices. Marco Rubio, accomplice.
Yeah.
Pam Bundy, accomplice.
Kristi Noem, yep.
Kristi Noem, definitely. Okay? I mean...
You can finish your sentence, Rocco.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now they're trying to kidnap American citizens.
Yes, or they're proclaiming that they have the ability to. Yeah, I'm with you. This is criminal stuff. Rocco, thank you very much. I want the Attorney General of Maryland to arrest these people.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
At the very least, the Attorney General of Maryland should be dragging the administration before them to find out the names of the ICE officers who arrested Mr. Garcia. Today is America on Fire by Dr. Elizabeth Hinton, the subtitle, The Untold Story of Police Violence and Black Rebellion Since the 1960s. I'm reading from the introduction. On a cold Monday at the start of February, Joseph McNeil, Franklin McCain, Ezell Blair Jr., and David Richmond sat down at a whites-only lunch counter at Woolworth's in Greensboro, North Carolina. A waiter refused to serve the young men and suggested they order takeout instead. The four North Carolina A&T students remained at the counter. The store manager approached and asked them to leave. Still, they did not move. A police officer arrived, slapping his nightstick in his hand in an attempt to intimidate. Rather than allow the students' offense against Jim Crow to continue, the manager of the store closed the store for the day. 24 black students returned on Tuesday. Over 50 black students and 3 white students participated in the sit-in on the next day, Wednesday, February 3rd, 1960. News of the protests spread, and soon the sit-in movement had expanded to 55 cities and 13 states. By April, over 50,000 students were involved. Conceived and organized entirely by young people, the sit-in movement ultimately led to the founding of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, which was run by activists such as John Lewis and Stokely Carmichael. As a Fisk student, Lewis participated in the sit-ins in Nashville, Tennessee, and he would go on to steer the Freedom Riders in the summer of 1961 and speak at the March on Washington in 1963. Carmichael joined the sit-in movement as a high school student
and would famously call for black power at the SNCC rally in Greenwood, Mississippi in 1966. Together, Lewis, Carmichael, and tens of thousands of other young black Americans signaled that their generation was prepared to risk their lives for freedom and equality. From Greensboro onward, the sit-ins helped build momentum and support for racial justice. The students in Greensboro engaged in a nonviolent protest to demand full integration, the right to vote, equal educational opportunities, decent jobs, protection against white supremacist terrorism, and an end to police violence. These were the central aims of the civil rights movement more broadly. By the end of the decade, black students at North Carolina A&T State University were still protesting, but now they were destroying property, assaulting police officers, and shooting in the direction of law enforcement, if not coming close to killing cops in self-defense. In May 1969, after black students at Greensboro's James B. Dudley High School were arrested, brutalized, and tear gassed by police during a series of protests against arbitrary disciplinary measures, A&T students came to the teenagers' defense. The confrontations between local police and black high school and college students led authorities to call the National Guard to A&T's campus, unleashing violence and repression that ended in the killing of sophomore Willie Grimes. A pivotal stop on the road to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, by the end of the decade, Greensboro was a site of sustained violence. It was far from unique in this regard. Between 1964 and 1972, but especially between 68 and 72, the United States endured internal violence on a scale not seen since the Civil War. Every major urban center in the country burned during those 8 years. Violence flared up not only in archetypal ghettos, including Harlem and Watts, and in majority black cities such as Detroit and Washington, D.C. It appeared in Greensboro, North Carolina, in Gary, Indiana, in Seattle, Washington, and countless places in between. Every city, small or large, where black residents lived in segregated, unequal conditions. In the North and the South, the East and the West, the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt, black people threw rocks and bottles at police, shot at them with rifles, smashed the windows of businesses and institutions, hurled firebombs, and plundered local stores. These events, what we commonly call riots, or what people who are to the left of center sometimes refer to as civil disturbances, caused hundreds of millions of dollars of property damage. Most immediately, they shaped the lives of the store owners whose businesses were destroyed, of the parents who lost their teenage sons to the police, and of the firefighters and cops who were harmed or killed. But ever since, Americans have been living in a nation and a national culture created in part by the extreme violence of the 1960s and the early 1970s. The aftershocks of that era have, at times, taken the form of mass violence to which all Americans have been witness. In Miami in 1980, in Los Angeles in 1992, in Cincinnati in 2001, and in more recent years, in Ferguson, Missouri, Baltimore, Maryland, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. The enduring impact of the violence of the 60s and 70s has been felt more regularly and more acutely by black people in American cities who faced new policing practices that emerged under the banner of the war on crime. The routine stop and frisks that attacked people's dignity, the breaking up of community gatherings, the presence of armed, uniformed officers in the hallways of under-resourced public schools, and more. Such strategies help repress mass violence as a regular phenomenon, but they ironically made further riots inevitable. Those strategies remain in place today. The book, America on Fire. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica or one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting progressive talk radio and tag you're it. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other
as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
Don't obey in advance, don't give them your will. Most of their power comes when you stand still. Defend what you cherish, the courts and the press. Stand with the unions, don't settle for less. Beware the one-party state. Vote while you can before it's too late. Take a stand, take the lead. This is the fight that freedom will need. How to fight tyranny, here's where it starts. With courage and truth and a fire in your heart. Resist their commands, let your voice ring clear. Freedom's a battle, but we hold it dear.
Welcome back, 36 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Paul in Chicago. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Good morning.
Hey.
Hi, Tom. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, thank you, Paul.
And you're welcome, Tom. And I have a letter that I sent to the Democrat Party. That was back in November by email. I also sent it to Dick Durbin. I also sent it to Tammy Duckworth. I've also sent it to Kamala Harris, and no response, Tom. I think this is the big problem. I think the Democrats are not getting out their message, and I don't think they're listening to their voters right now. And I thought that was a great win in Wisconsin for the state Supreme Court. And taking on a man that had unlimited money, I think the Democrat Party needs to go send a team to Wisconsin and talk to all the different people that were part of that team to get that win and find out how they got that win and take that back and use that across the United States for the Democratic Party so we're successful here in future elections here.
Okay, I get it. Here's the problem, Paul. There's no such thing as a Democrat Party. There's literally no such thing. There is no party called the Democrat Party. That is a phrase that was come up with by some whack job back in the 1940s that was wildly popularized by, what's his name? Brain fart. Who said the Democratic Party, which is the actual name of the party, Thomas Jefferson named it, the Democratic Party sounds too friendly. People like democracy. So don't call it the Democratic Party. Call it the Democrat Party with an emphasis on the rat. And but your point, I get your point, Paul. And I think that Ben Wickler, who was the head of the Wisconsin Democrats, this is Joe McCarthy, in the 1950s. I think that the head of the Democratic Party in Wisconsin is on this stuff. Now that the head of the Democratic Party in Minnesota is now the head of the National Democratic Party. He's a pretty good guy. So I think things are going to get better. Just because you didn't get a response to your letter doesn't mean that the Democrats are not listening to their people. Paul, thanks for the call. Steve in Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind?
Hey, good morning and almost good afternoon there, Tom.
Indeed.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to follow up. About an hour ago, you were talking about, Trump basically doing Putin's work to destroy America, and that if Putin told him to do all this, or didn't tell him, he couldn't do it any better.
Yep.
I would have to agree totally. It's been pretty obvious that he's closely associated with Putin for many, many years. We've discussed this, and what I feel is the problem right now is the American media cannot wrap their heads around this or don't want to, and neither can the American public.
Yep.
They can't believe that an American president could possibly be a Soviet agent or under the thumb of Vladimir Putin. They just can't get their head around it.
Yep.
And until that happens, I think we're just going to be mired in this.
I agree. I think Trump has been on the side of the Russians since the 80s. They certainly bailed him out over and over and over again in the 90s and the early 2000s. His sons both bragged about it at some length. Whether it's a mutually beneficial relationship or whether Trump is under the thumb of Putin is an open question, but I don't think it matters. I mean, the effect, or whether, as some have theorized, this has nothing to do with Trump being afraid of Putin or owing Putin anything. It's just that Trump wants to be Putin. He wants to be just like him. Putin is his role model. Regardless of what the motivation is, and we may well never know the motivation, Donald Trump is acting as if he was a Russian agent, and he is actively taking steps. He and Elon Musk, who both of them, according to press reports, have been having regular phone conversations with Putin for the last 2 years. These two men are systematically destroying our government and shattering our standing around the world. They've destroyed our soft power by tearing down USAID. China's rushing nuclear in Africa. And it is, they're doing damage that it will take generations to repair, if it can even be repaired. You know, some of these relationships and institutions literally took, a half a century to create, or longer, a century to create. And go ahead.
It's quite mind-blowing, Tom, all of it. And I'm trying to think of anything that he's tried to do that's decent and helpful for the American public in his first 3 months here. I don't see it, and if there is, I can't see it.
No, he says he wants to bring manufacturing back, but he's just doing it completely wrong. He's doing it in a way that's going to harm America rather than help America. And that tells me that it's just a canard. It's just an excuse. He's saying, oh yeah, I want to bring manufacturing back, so I'm going to do this and this and this. But really, in fact, what he's doing is like a kid with a BB gun. He's just shooting in every direction. He doesn't care who he hits or whose eye gets knocked out. Steve, thanks for the call. Good one. Doug in Bitely, Michigan. Hey, Doug, what's up?
Yes, sir. Well, I sued a corporation, $1 billion corporation, back in the early 2000s. We wound up settling out of court, but I used the NLRB because I was trying to start a union, and the company I was working for, they fired me. And so fortunately for me, I knew Owen Beaver's personal pilot. And so he put me in touch with his son, Ken Beaver. And they did an investigation and found that these guys, conspired against me. But anyway, I'm worried. I'm worried that with this Doge leak of information, how far back do they keep records?
Oh, forever. Whether the digital records are forever or not is an open question. But the government agencies typically don't destroy records over time.
And with your infinite wisdom, Tom, do you have any idea what they would use this information for?
Well, it's definitely not infinite, but my guess, and this is just a guess, Elon Musk or SpaceX specifically, was being investigated by the NLRB for violations of labor law. There were my recollection is there were people at SpaceX who wanted to unionize, and Musk fired them or made their lives miserable, and they sued, as you did, before the NLRB. And apparently all those investigations have been put on hold or have been ended altogether. I think if I had to guess as to his motivation, having Doge go in and destroy the NLRB, that would be high on the list. I think that there's a whole lot of self-interest involved here. Elon Musk gets, $6-7 million a day in government contracts. So, that probably has something to do with it. Doug, I got to move on, but thanks for the call. Bill in Boca Raton, Florida. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Fine, thank you. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just had a question. I just put you on for a little bit ago, and I heard you talking about the bank bailouts. I'm just wondering why nobody speaks about the bank bailouts in 2008 that the government recovered not only recovered all the money, they actually made money on the bailouts. The finally they ended up giving out $630 billion, and they ended up making $121 billion. Why is that never discussed?
I don't know. Frankly, I was unaware of those numbers. I would have to fact check them. I'm not saying that you're wrong. You may well be right. Typically, that is what happens. When it's certainly what happened when Barack Obama bailed out Ford and GM. He put up, as I recall, around $1 billion, and we made back a hell of a lot more. So it's entirely possible. Bill, thanks for the call. 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Helping you win the water cooler wars. I'll be right back with your calls. Stick around. And welcome back. Joanne in Portland. Hey, Joanne, what's on your mind today?
Hi, hello. Everybody keeps talking about impeaching Trump, but J.D. Vance is right behind him, and he's just as bad, really. Like this thing with the universities. Mm-hmm. He was talking about that long before he was even tapped to be vice president. I saw interviews. They pulled up interviews of him talking about that the universities have to be dismantled.
I agree.
And taken over.
Yeah. He's also been claiming that the Supreme Court can be ignored.
Right. Yeah. So Trump isn't the only problem. So if they impeach Trump, what do we do with J.D. Vance?
Yep.
Those people.
I get it. The one benefit that we would have of having J.D. Vance in the White House instead of Donald Trump is that J.D. Vance is not the competent communicator and brilliant showman that Donald Trump is. I mean, we have to give Trump credit. He is P.T. Barnum on steroids. He is the Music Man. I forget his name in the movie, but Harold.
Right. J.D. Vance does not have character.
No. He not only doesn't have character, he doesn't have charisma. And Trump does. Trump can actually, say things in ways that people believe has conviction. And J.D. Vance comes across as a smarmy, little know-it-all, and with a chubby face and eyeliner, and I mean, he's not telegenic, he's not photogenic. His voice is a little creepy. That would be the only advantage. I don't think he would have the ability to get reelected. And I think it would hurt the Republican Party. But, time will tell, Joanne. Time will tell. The guy's 78 years old.
I think he's smarter than Trump.
Oh, yeah. I think most people are smarter than Trump. I doubt Trump's IQ is over 100. Although he is very cunning. He knows, psychopaths are good at this. They're professional con men. Joanne, thank you for the call. Spot on. Kathy in Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Kathy, what's up?
Excuse me, Croak. I've had bees in my brain all night about what's going on with Kilmer and trying to think a way out of this. Not that I know what I'm talking about, but I started looking things up, and apparently people can apply within their states for naturalization. I didn't know this. I just looked it up. I found that if Kilmer's wife has, guardianship, a legal guardianship, power of attorney, she might be able to do it. It looks like it's real complicated. Yeah. But the objective would be he would then be under the jurisdiction of the United States, and that would remove.
Well, he already was. I mean, he had temporary parole status. Yeah. He was protected by the law. He was not supposed to be deported. A judge a decade ago said he should not be sent back to El Salvador because the gangs would kill him.
I know, but if he were classified a naturalized citizen, it would underscore.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Kathy. It's a long process. It's a multi-year process.
No, I know, but here's the thing. Holland, Chris, what's his name?
Chris Van Hollen.
Van Hollen, he could pull some strings within the state of Maryland if they could pull this off. And the other thing is, this is a massive conspiracy, which also involves that jerk president down in El Salvador. So that's a whole other ball of wax.
There you go.
And they're defaming him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They're lying about him. Pam Bondi did it again this morning on national television. Kathy, thanks for the call. It is just about 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. They wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, their ultimate talking document does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out.
We got jobs shipped overseas, left folks out in the cold. Neoliberal promises all turn to fool's gold. Factory shutdowns go dark while billionaires cashing high. They bought our silence for decades while the middle class watched it die. Bring it back home, take a stand. It's time we reclaim our land. Jobs, unions, and fair pay.
Welcome back. 51 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Charles in Vancouver. Hey, Charles, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Mr. Hartmann, sir, it's a beautiful day in our neck of the woods for sure.
Indeed.
And I look forward to this Saturday. I'll be wearing my union shirt, and I will be carrying around my father's shadow box. He was a veteran of World War II in Korea, and I often wish he was around so I could get his take on things. But anyway, I haven't been in on your programs as much as I usually like to. But it's been 10 years and a couple weeks now since that outrageous scandal in the Obama administration. I don't know if you remember. It was just...
When he wore the tan suit?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a dark day in America.
2 to 3 days of this media just, slithering over this nonsense.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward to 10 years... and, bypass Marjorie Taylor Greene sitting in the chambers dressed like a stripper. You have a reject from Ringling Brothers named as the name of Kid Rock standing in the Oval Office. It's like, Tom, I just don't know anymore. And but you're kind of like a bastion in the desert, and I still reiterate, I try to tell as many people, you want to listen to a historian and a journalist and a scholar, listen to this guy.
Well, thank you, Charles. Charles, great to
but
hear
anyway,
from you.
Hey, can you imagine? It was just so outrageous.
Yeah, the 10-year anniversary of the tan suit. It's, incredible. Charles, thank you. Thanks for a little levity. I appreciate it. Teresa in Missoula, Montana. Hey, Teresa, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. Excuse me. Yes, those were the days, weren't they? The tan suit
indeed.
days. I was calling because John Boniface, who I believe has been on your show, I think that's
Many
why
times,
I started following him.
Yeah, it's been years, but yes.
Well, okay. I know in the last couple of days I've heard you mention, about impeaching Trump and that we need an impeachment movement. I don't know, you may be aware of this, but John has a website where he's getting people to sign a petition to impeach Trump. And I believe right now he's got about 250,000 signatures, and obviously we need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
The website is impeachtrumpagain.org.
Okay.
So if people want to do that, I don't know why it's not getting more. He doesn't tweet a lot. I follow him on both that place and Blue Sky. And I just am not seeing a lot of information about it. So I thought maybe if your listeners were aware of it, maybe they'd like to sign that.
Okay. Thanks for the heads up on that, Teresa. John's a good guy. I salute his efforts. Thank you. Andy in Vancouver, Washington. Hey, Andy, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Just here real quick, just an FYI, the average cost paid by an employer into unemployment insurance is 6%, with a tax deduction for that payment under federal income taxes for 5.4%.
Okay. Thank you.
So they get to write that off on their taxes, not to mention 100% of what they pay their employees is a tax deductible expense as well.
You're right.
And also, the way to fix this problem is to switcheroo back on the legislation in 96 that was the Telecommunications Act. They wouldn't be able to build information monopolies.
Oh, yeah. The Telecommunications Act of 96, particularly Section 230, was just a disaster. But I get it. Andy, thank you. Robert in Santa Rosa, California. Hey, Robert, we got about a little more than a half a minute here. You got a quick one?
Oh, go ahead. So, hey, I was talking about something about 1960 when gas was 25 cents a gallon.
I remember.
Just to let you know.
I remember.
And but the things in 1960, you know what they were doing? They were trying to get rid of legal Mexicans out of the state of California, and they used it. And there was a man named Paul Pelosi that was involved up here. He wasn't married to Nancy at that time, but he was up here because the farmers had a problem with their crops, and they needed just people that could be able to take care of it because they had to use some chemicals to get rid of the problem, and to do that, these guys had to go along with these people about getting rid of the people with the green card.
Interesting. Robert, I'm sorry, I'm out of time, but fascinating. Thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It does require all of us to show up. So get out there, get active, tag for it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the around you. Stay safe. And I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!